the country. Sports Radio 810, WHB Kansas City, the power of sports.
Isn't this a sports show?
I'm trying to take risks and take chances, get messy, like Mr. Frizzle told me to do. Magic School Bus reference for 7 people. Okay, good. I got it. Don't worry. Take chances, make mistakes, get messy. That's what it was. Shout out to Miss Frizzle.
Almost entirely.
I was homeschooled, so she was like my,
She was your science teacher.
She was my science teacher. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That was Bill Nye. How dare you?
Hey, Beards, you honestly think Josh's mom would let him watch Bill Nye? No way.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
You think I was reading Harry Potter for fun, Beards? Are you kidding me?
So Wishbone was your English class?
You're damn right.
Yeah!
You're damn right, Wishbone was my English class. Absolutely.
Take the show with you by listening on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app at 810WHB.com or by searching for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
I was basically educated on PBS.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, I'm not complaining. Great.
Look at us now.
Yeah, look at us.
This is Almost Entirely Sports on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
It is Almost Entirely Sports. We are coming to you live from the past, present, and future. It is a multiverse, space-time continuum edition of Almost Entirely Sports here tonight. I will explain, but first I'll tell you who is coming up joining us on tonight's show. I am, of course, Joshua Brisco, Rudy Salazar on the other side of the glass. Great guest list for you tonight. It's just kind of a funny way that we had to go about it. Both Seth Keysor of the Chief in the North newsletter, the Times-Ours podcast, and The Athletic, and Jordan Foote of Sports Radio 810 WHB and ArrowheadReport.com, all joining us, both joining us. It feels like all because they have so many jobs, but no, both of them will join us on tonight's show. Seth here in just a few minutes. Jordan and Rudy and I will take the second hour of the show. And then third hour tonight, you'll hear a little bit of best of, a couple of things you may have missed from last week that you ought to hear. That well, here's the reason. Here's the logic behind all of what this evening is going to entail. As you're listening to this, Jordan Foote and I are either on the way to or recently landing in Los Angeles, California for Radio Row. We're going to be broadcasting live there, both the Zone, Jason Anderson, from 10 to 2, and yours truly for Almost Entirely Sports, 7 to 10, each weeknight, the rest of the week. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's Radio Row action here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Really excited for that, but it also means here's a little bit of a curveball, a little bit of a switch hit. It's mixing metaphors. It don't make any sense. For AES, where we've had to cross some wires and jump through some portals in space and time. And, you know, hopefully if any news broke at 6:58 p.m. tonight, well, just wasn't in the cards for us, I don't think. Because this is what we've got. And again, we'll talk about all things Chiefs with our friend Seth Keysor momentarily. Jordan Foote, Rudy Salazar, and I will talk about a large number of things in the second hour. One thing, though, that you will not hear in either of those conversations, at least definitively, we made a passing joke to it with Jordan and Rudy, but what you will not hear is the definitive conversation about the fact that Eric Bieniemy will not be an NFL head coach this offseason once again. The Texans and Saints both filled their roles. Bieniemy had an interview with the Broncos and Saints this coaching cycle. It seemed like there was a chance that he could have ended up in New Orleans, but they go in-house with Dennis Allen. Apparently, they were looking for a candidate exactly like Dennis Allen, and Dennis Allen just happened to fulfill that series of categories. So, you know, good work for him, I guess. What a good gig if you can get it. But the additional thing right now on Bieniemy, at least as I'm here talking to you right now, as in the past present, there was a report from Tom Pelissero, and then Sam McDowell of the Kansas City Star gave some important surrounding context. Pelissero said that Bieniemy's contract was up at the end of this season. I've referred to that on this show before as something that I believed to be true and was pretty confident was true, but didn't necessarily have the definitive report that would clear all things up or whatever. McDowell quote tweeting Pelissero saying that Eric Bieniemy signed a one-year deal after the Super Bowl last offseason to stay with the Chiefs through this last season. That shed some light on things in an important way because in Pelissero's tweet was saying, hey, he's a free agent. He could either come back to Kansas City or he could go be a hot OC candidate for someone else somewhere else. And there are two little quick glances at either side of this that I'd like to take a quick look at. One is, why would Eric Bieniemy leave? And I think we've also mentioned this on the show at some point in passing. If you go through 4 years of being the offensive coordinator for the most prolific offense in football and you're not getting head coaching jobs, I would understand thinking that maybe a change of scenery would be the way to go. I don't know if that would have been Buffalo with Josh Allen or if that would have been, instead of Mike Kafka taking the Giants job, could Eric Bieniemy gone and fixed Daniel Jones in a way that would have impressed some team with their own broken quarterback that maybe would have been more impressive than just capitalizing on Patrick Mahomes? I don't know the logic of NFL owners or GMs. I try to get in their heads sometimes, and it scares me. But I would understand if Bieniemy had logic somewhere of, hey, you know what? Doing it in Kansas City at this high level even isn't getting me the job. He's interviewed with almost half the league now, 14 teams over the last 4 years. It's ridiculous. But maybe he would see a change of scenery making some sense for him. If I'm the Chiefs, though, from their side here, one is that clearly his contract was up by McDowell's report after last season as well. This isn't necessarily uncharted territory where they don't really know what Bieniemy might do without a contract at this moment. He signed last year after the Super Bowl. He could very easily sign this year after the season ended here and after his contract is officially up, if that hasn't already happened. And the biggest thing right now for me is that if I was Andy Reid, if I was the Chiefs, I would be pretty concerned about making sure that Bieniemy does stay in Kansas City because Mike Kafka has gone to go be the offensive coordinator of the New York Giants. Kafka was, I think, clearly kind of the OC in waiting. If Bieniemy would have gotten the job last offseason, I think it would be Kafka. If Bieniemy would have gotten the job early in his hiring cycle, I think it would have been Kafka. But now, with some uncertainty there at the quarterback coaching position, I do not think that it would be a good thing for this offense to lose one of the guys that clearly is trusted there in the offense. But I would argue that from a coaching standpoint, it is clearly number 1, Andy Reid, clearly number 2, Eric Bieniemy, clearly number 3, Mike Kafka. But all three of those guys really do belong in the conversation of the impact they've had on this offense altogether. So if you're going to lose number 3, if you could keep 1 and 2 right where they're at in Reid and Bieniemy, I think that would clearly be the best thing for the Chiefs. But also, I'm not sure 100% one way or the other if it would be the best thing for Bieniemy. And maybe Andy Reid has a really strong feeling about Greg Lewis or Joe Blameyer or someone else in that room to say, you know what, I think this person's ready to be an offensive coordinator right now. Maybe there would be talk of bringing back Matt Nagy, perhaps. Not super inspiring, but would be fine to have someone that knows the offense. But the offense has evolved since Matt Nagy left. It's been 4 years. So I do think that there is a lot currently up in the air there. Something to keep an eye on as we go through the rest of this show here tonight. Not talking about Eric Bieniemy, but talking about a bunch of other things. We'll start it with Seth Keysor of the Chief in the North newsletter, talking about where the Chiefs go from here, what they're doing at the receiver position, and something they're not doing quite right with McCole Hardman. We'll talk about that with Seth Keysor next here on Almost Entirely Sports.
Today.
Now it's time for very serious football talk with the man who met his wife on a blind date, chaperoned by his parents.
They actually came along on the first date with us. It was No! I rode in the back seat. I was 22.
The man who needs to take a minute to remember the names of all of his children.
Do all of your kids have the same first letter?
No, actually. Let me think. Do any of them? Tucker, Mason, Cole, Isabel, and Lucas.
The man who can defend you in court, but will probably choose not to.
I'll cop to this on a public setting right now. I am an aggressive cuddler in a consensual sense.
Comma, officer.
Good grief, he's a pastor too? When does this guy sleep?
You will find Seth Keysor everywhere except for in his or your bed, because not only does he not sleep, he's also a faithful husband. So that's important.
It's Seth Keysor of The Athletic on Almost Entirely Sports.
Yes, indeed, a Seth Keysor Tuesday here in the off season. I'm still not totally used to it yet. Look, at this point, you almost certainly know who the one and only Seth Keysor is. You can follow him on Twitter at RealMNChiefsFan. You can read his work up on the Chief in the North newsletter. That is at mnchiefsfan.substack.com. You can subscribe there with the everlasting incredible deal that is still there despite my best arguments against it, where you can sign up for the newsletter. It'll be sent to your inbox every time there's a new piece that goes up for $12 a year. At the Chief of the North newsletter, you want to get straight to that link, you can go to bit.ly/Seth really hates money. That is an actual URL that will actually take you to the place where you can sign up. 60% off forever, of an already very low price for incredible content. Seth, it's still a really frustratingly good deal that I feel like you should be amending. Also, Times Ours is free, the podcast on The Athletic, so that's even better deal, I suppose. But it's all worth it because I'm opening up the page right now, and I know I'm about to feast my eyes on your Pro Bowl film breakdown review, charting every Mahomes snap. I haven't read your story yet, but I assume that it's here. Going to take a look right now.
I actually watched some of the Pro Bowl for the first time in a few years, and I tend to – I know this sounds dumb. This is going to sound dumb. I try to watch things like the Pro Bowl, or at least have it on, because I want to support the NFL purely for selfish purposes. I want the NFL's TV ratings to be as good as possible so they get the best deal possible so the salary cap goes up. I know that sounds insane.
It does.
It does, and I understand, but that's like an I'm doing my part kind of thing.
Yeah, you're Rosie the Riveter of the Pro Bowl. It's like you flexing with a bandana and your sleeve rolled up. We can do it. Exactly. We can watch the Pro Bowl.
It just, and that to me, I know it's dumb and I know it doesn't make a difference, but I want the salary cap to be as high as possible because the Chiefs have the highest paid quarterback in the world, the best quarterback in the world. And so it's just it's dumb, but all Super Bowl contenders should want the salary cap as high as possible so they can plug whatever gaps they have. Because we've talked about this before, right? In team building, you generally speaking use the draft to build And generally speaking, you use free agent to plug holes and to plug gaps. And you really need to do both well. And then, you obviously need to do undrafted free agents really well. The low-level free agency churn, which is really its own category, I think.
Yeah.
Like signing a guy for a 1-year, $2 million deal is a completely different category. And I just think that's recognizing what guys should have been better than they were the year before and will actually perform on a prove-it deal, right? Trying to identify, like, let's say Jaron Reed versus Melvin Ingram. Reed was fine eventually. He didn't start off real great. He eventually played okay, but he wasn't really a difference maker, whereas Ingram was a difference maker. Yeah. And being able to identify those guys who can do that in 1 year is almost impossible. But it's its own niche of team building. And I think we tend to just say, oh, there's the draft and free agency. It's like, well, there's different types of free agency, and there's different layers to the draft. So you can tell it's the offseason because I just went on a 2-minute soliloquy on that.
Well, I was actually just thinking as we started going, like, we don't really have to get straight into the nuts and bolts of the tape or of what you've written. We're kind of back in that, that realm where we could talk about some dumb thing your kids did. Or, we can spend some time talking about second level free agency. Here's my theory, because you mentioned that, and I thought I'd go pull open the screenshot of the Chiefs Wikipedia page for their current roster. There's a screenshot of it that friend of the show, listener of the show, Steve Fitzpatrick tweeted out maybe a week or so ago, and it is a list of unrestricted free agents over on the side, and Blake Bell, Austin Blythe, Michael Burton, Chad Henne, Mike Hughes, Melvin Ingram, Kyle Long, Ben Neiman, Derek Nottie, Dorian O'Daniel, like, that's about half the list of just the guys kind of at that second level. I skipped Orlando Brown and Tyrann Mathieu and Charvarius Ward. Yep. But those guys matter a great deal. Those dudes are on the field often, and even if they're not, it's, hey, well, can Chad Henne play when he needs to? Or Andrew Wiley is on this list. He ended up I didn't think he was going to end up being on the team just based off his cap hit and what I thought would be his trade value in the preseason. He ended up starting more games at right tackle than anybody, I think, right? Certainly counting the playoffs. I'm almost sure he did.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, because Remmers and Yang traded on and off.
Yeah, I guess what I was just thinking is, did he start more than them combined, which is also might be yes, but definitely he would have started the most of that trio. Anyway, that sort of thing is interesting, but it's also difficult because this is sort of meta as well, I guess, but I don't know who the Miami Dolphins' Derek Nottie is, right? Like, we don't know who Andrew Wiley is for the Cardinals. But so whenever guys are shuffling through, like, that element of free agency is probably deeply under-discussed because we know the big guys here, and we knew when Trent Williams was looking like he was going to hit the market, like, wait a second, let's talk about this. But nobody else anywhere else is talking about Andrew Wiley unless he signs. And then that's how we all learned about Austin Blythe, and then they drafted Creed Humphrey anyway. It just that's an interesting angle of this that I think is probably just under discussed because it's a harder thing to talk about for 32 teams. Absolutely, and that's a really good way of saying it. Like, other teams, fans of other teams don't know who Mike Remmers is probably. Right. They and by that they might know that he exists as a player, but they don't really know that he has actually played pretty well for the Chiefs when he's been on the field. And this year he struggled with injuries, and he's obviously on the wrong side of 30. He's actually 33 now, and so it's tough to really figure out free agency in advance because of that. And everyone wants to have a list of the best free agents. And basically those lists consist of guys that everyone knows who they are. And there's a reason usually people know who they are. But one reason Jaron Reed had people excited is because people knew who he was. And sometimes name recognition doesn't necessarily equate to anything because name recognition is often based on draft position. Right. And that's not necessarily everyone knew who Mike Hughes was because the draft is covered in depth. Whereas it's not like his, it's not like his pro career was anything that should have made us say, ooh, well, maybe he can do something. So, no, it's an interesting time of the year. I'm excited to get into it. Remember when this used to be the only fun part of the Chiefs season? Yeah, absolutely. And I still do enjoy it. I know I'll enjoy it less whenever we've been doing it for several months. But right now we love the transaction, like throughout media. I mean, there's a reason that during the week leading up to the Pro Bowl, like, just last week in media, I'm 100% confident that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday on NFL Live or First Take or whatever, they were talking about Tom Brady, or could Aaron Rodgers be traded, or what free agent targets do these teams need, with the Super Bowl still yet to be played. I mean, we do that stuff mid-season all the time. We did talk about Melvin Ingram a ton. The transaction's fun to talk about. Also, looking at the roster again, we could do, I'm not kidding, a 5 to 10 minute conversation about 8 or 9 different defensive linemen on this team. Like, dead serious. We just could talk about or tell the story of Frank Clark, Mike Dana, Chris Jones, Josh Kando, Colin Saunders, Tershawn Wharton, Melvin Ingram, Alex Okafor. Like, we definitely, did I say Jaron Reed? He's on there also. Like,
but he would be.
We could talk about all of those guys for a little while, but we can't do that for the Lions. It's just kind of maybe that's also for me a reason that national media has a ceiling, because it is impossible, and there are some people who do it really well to a great extent, but it is impossible to know 8 linemen on 32 teams. Like, it's just you can't really know every element of that. Which is why we are here for you, dear listener. It's why we are important, and it's why you should subscribe to Seth, and it's why you should send me just an envelope full of cash in the mail.
And that's one thing when people say specifically, like, "Oh, what free agents do you like for the Chiefs?"
Yep.
That becomes complicated really quickly. And that's where I tend to go in the direction with team needs.
Yep.
And if I'm going to get specific, then I'll really try to dive a little deeper. But the problem is, let's say, so I think wide receiver is a need. Now, I also think, they should just adapt to who McCole Hardman is and let him be the primary deep threat and let Tyreek Hill work underneath. But that's, neither here nor there.
That might be here or there in a second, because I don't think I've heard you say that before, but I'm intrigued. We'll circle back.
Yeah, well, Tyreek Hill's reached. Well, yeah, we'll circle back. And so that's those are things. But I can't. When people talk about, like, okay, well, what receivers do you think they'd like? I mean, other than I can say, yeah, Devontae Adams is awesome. Healthy Allen Robinson is awesome. I can look at those guys, but I can't, without reviewing probably at least 6 games, tell you much about a guy. Like, I usually do 4, actually. When they sign a free agent, I look at 4 to try to get, like, a little bit of an idea of a trend, and I try to go against varying levels of competition, and then I can give you an educated guess. Now, just keep in mind, if reviewing every snap of a player from their previous year for 4 straight games can give you an educated guess, you know what doing less than that can give you? Like a non-educated guess. And that's where you just do the best you can. You talk to people who know the team, that sort of stuff. Like, I could tell someone who asked me a lot about Byron Pringle.
Right.
But, and even then, let's be honest, a lot of people that cover teams it's not like they're out there grinding film. It's not like they're, and so there's there's really not a lot of great information out there, and that's one reason Pro Football Focus, despite its flaws and foibles, and I believe those flaws and foibles exist for any system.
That's actually what FF stands for. It stands for Pro Flaws Foibles.
But that's one reason why they do provide value, is that, even if you don't really trust the grading system, someone looked at every snap and assigned a grade.
Right.
And it's at least a place to start. And that tells you more than what looking at, tackle stats for a linebacker.
Right.
Or something like that. Right. So, it's an interesting time of year. It's the reason it's fun. Like, it's part of the reason I think fans secretly, I think a lot of fans don't love football as much as they think they love football. I think they love team building and being right or, about stuff. And they love thinking about how things should work and getting mad when it doesn't work the way they think it should have. And being able to say, if only they'd done what I thought. I think people like that. And that's the one reason why Madden, before, from everything I'm told, I only tried, like, the last time I tried to play the Madden franchise mode, because my kids play it with me and I have a lot of fun with it, but I tried to play the franchise mode, like, in 2019, and they've ruined it. Like, there's a reason why it used to be, like, incredibly popular. Like, a lot of people, I can tell you, I have completed 15-year franchises in Madden.
Yes.
And it was so much fun.
It's great.
Like, so much fun. And so, like, people like that stuff. And so it's fun. And it also allows you to kind of turn the page on what was a really tough loss. I mean, Patrick Mahomes played poorly in the second half. And it's caused a lot of people to doubt a lot of things. And that's been a lot of fun to watch.
Like, it's watching Mahomes play a bad half of football. I think it's reasonable if it causes you to doubt a number of things. Like, if there's a God.
Well, the timing of it was so poor, and so now the problem is it's like it was always him being great in the playoffs was an automatic, and now we know that it's not, and I think that's why a lot of people are kind of struggling, and then there come with it a lot of takes regarding Mahomes, a lot of takes about Joe Burrow, and just a lot of things in general where it's like, okay, it was a half of football, guys. It was a really poorly timed half. That stinks. But what are you going to do? Sometimes players just don't play well. And with him, it's so incredibly rare that, what can you take away from, that, he still has stuff to work on. Great. What else do you do from that? Yeah. But I know you and I haven't had a chance to chat about it as much here.
Yeah, I do want to circle back through that. And again, if you can't find a freaking $1 a month in your couch cushions, and I don't carry cash, but we had some people over for New Year's Eve, for our New Year's Eve party that turned into a proposal party. And for like 3 days, I found just like little piles of change. So presumably someone came over with change in their pockets and left it in couch cushions. All of that to say, I don't have change anywhere in my life. And I could find $1 a month in my couch cushions just by having friends over every once in a while. You can do that too. But if you can't, this post is unlocked for everybody up in the Chief of the North newsletter looking at Mahomes versus the Bengals. But I'm going to put a pin in it. You gave me a segue, and right here, but I'm jumping off the segue to turn back and point at what you said earlier about Mecole Hardman and Tyreek Hill. I don't think I've heard you speak this into existence yet, but I also think I have a pretty clear idea of where you're headed with it, and I am very intrigued.
So here's the thing with Mecole Hardman. There's things that he is and things that he is not. He hasn't developed consistently as a full route tree runner, or necessarily you see Mahomes get frustrated with him on occasion. And how much of that is his fault? We don't know. We all assume that it's Hardman's fault because it can't be Mahomes, right? But what we do know is that he hasn't developed a ton beyond his rookie year. But we also know that when used correctly, he's a really explosive player who does things that almost no one else in the league can do. And I think with me, one of the frustrations that I do have with Andy Reid, and I think a lot of people have a lot of manufactured ones. So at times I almost hesitate to critique him because so much gets put on him that I don't think should be.
Yeah.
Because that's just such an easy thing to say. Oh, the play calling sucked in the second half. And what I always tell people, well, okay, tell me how. Tell me why.
Or any time an offensive lineman gets a holding penalty. Like, at the end of the game, you just go, this team's not very well coached. They had 7 penalties. Like, I don't know, man.
Well, that's just it.
Creed Humphrey moved the football before he was supposed to. I don't know.
Right.
Is that Andy Reid?
Well, and that's the thing is, no matter what the failure is, you can always blame it on the coach.
Yep.
And it's a convenient thing to do. Now, are there things that are Andy Reid's fault? Because then you can just say, like, axioms like, well, the buck stops with him. Okay.
Right.
Like, and so if he's done everything he's supposed to do to teach someone to do something right and they just failed to execute, is that on them? So is it his fault that, I don't know, Ben Neiman gets out of position? Well, it's his fault for putting him on the field. And you notice how you can make it his fault literally anything.
Yep.
And that kind of argument I just don't think is sound. So because of that, I hesitate at times. But one thing I will say, like, it's been well known for years that Andy Reid likes to have his receivers capable of playing all 3 receiver spots. Mecole Hardman's not a guy who should be playing X in the Chiefs offense. He just shouldn't. That's just not, or Z, honestly. Like, he just hasn't shown the ability to run the full route tree and to make the sight adjustments that they need. But he's incredibly fast. He's an excellent deep threat. Now, he's not as good a deep threat as Hill because he doesn't adjust as well to the ball. But he is still a guy that teams absolutely have to. Anytime he runs a go, a post, an out and up, anything like that, you have to have help over the top because there's a good chance they'll beat him down the sideline. And those deep throws down the sideline is something they largely abandoned this year, not just with Hardman, but with Hill. And part of that is because of how teams play them. And I get that. But people talk about, the Chiefs need another deep threat and that kind of stuff, but they have a great deep threat on the roster in Hardman. Now, he's not, an all-time deep threat like Hill, but he's still a guy that can pull the defense all over the place. And even being a little predictable in that area isn't a terrible thing because it allows you to make the opponent predictable too. And so I just don't understand the value of utilizing Hardman in ways that don't maximize him.
Yeah.
Like asking him to run certain kinds of routes when you could maximize his value by having him execute, any given play. He's either running a deep post or a crosser of some sort that has him running away from coverage. But even then, there's sight adjustments that are needed. Are they running zone? Where does he stop? That kind of stuff that Hill does well that Hardman doesn't. Yeah. And so, you could have him touch the ball a number of times a game just on wide receiver screens, various jet sweeps, that sort of stuff, and then deep routes. And by doing that, you would maximize him while still saying, okay, now we need a couple other guys that can play all three positions. But Andy doesn't do that. That is something that, and not that they have him do exactly everything Hill does. They don't. Mm-hmm. And really, in all of Hardman's best games have been when Hill is out, generally speaking.
Yeah. Because
of his physical talent, and when he's asked to do more, he generally can. But that's also when they game plan a little more to utilize his skill set. And so it's just something that frustrates me. And so if that seemed like kind of a side route, it's just one of those things where that deep ball that Mahomes hit Hardman on down the left sideline against the Bengals. He ran an out and up, cooked the corner, was there, had great separation to where by the time the ball arrived, and it was a perfect throw by Mahomes, the safety couldn't get over there in time. Why are we doing that with Hardman more often?
This is one of those questions that hearing you ask makes me retroactively think about the times that I've thought to myself, man, it seems like that I just tell McCole Hardman to run deep more often. And see, because especially think about what you wrote about this earlier in the year, and people ought to go read this as well, like the evolution of Tyreek Hill and where he is at right now as a receiver, right. where I think you would argue that he is even more of a threat right now, and he was more of a threat this season than in years past, just because there are more ways for him to beat you. McCole Hardman does not have all of those ways, but he's got a couple of really good ways, like ridiculous speed and in a defense or in an offense that does like to take those deep shots and does have a quarterback who is made to exploit those types of skills. Like if McCole Hardman was a Steeler last year, I would understand, right? It's like, well, is Ben Roethlisberger going to be the guy that actually makes defenses respect this? But it's one of those things that seems so simple that I wonder if we're the idiots missing something. But we had a similar conversation about how they used Clyde last year. I mean,
yeah,
I don't understand why what you are saying is not a description of how it actually is happening.
And that's where it's always more complicated than when someone like me is talking about it, because I don't know enough. I don't know enough about what's going on in the room, and I understand that any kind of predictability can be an inherently bad thing. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there's something to be said for altering what you do to be based around what your players do well. And we saw the Chiefs hold on to some of those stretch and outside zone runs longer than they should have this year, despite the fact that really the only running back they had on the roster that could execute them well is Jerick McKinnon. Yeah. And their offensive line can't really execute them that well. I mean, Tooney and Creed can, but Smith and Brown can't. Mm-hmm. And so it's one of those things where it's like, I think Andy Reid is an incredible coach that is great at getting the most out of players, but he doesn't always do that by molding. But he does mold his system around his players too. That's where, like, what I'm saying is, like, it's not 100%. It's not a black and white thing. Mm-hmm. But there are some players that it feels as though they could be maximizing more, like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, like McCole Hardman, where you see a skill set there. And then you ask yourself, well, why isn't that skill set being utilized? So this seems like, it's turning into an Andy Reid bashing session. I'm sure that for some of it, there's a perfectly logical answer. That, if I was pulled in a room with him, he'd say, well, what about this, Keysor? And I'd say, I have no answer for that. And he'd say, that's why I do what I do and you do what you do. I'd say, fair enough. I fully expect that to be the case. But when you have a situation where teams are playing the Chiefs a certain way, you might as well try to keep them playing that certain way. And that's some of what they did this year, was have Hill work underneath a ton. Maybe just accept that that's what's in your future now. And don't try to force things deep with him, because no one's going to play him one-on-one anymore. And sure, always be watching for it and have Mahomes, which they did several times this season, right? It's like, oh, they don't have a safety over the top. Run a go, Tyreek, and let's just go for it. And they scored. But it's a little frustrating to watch. But and the idea of them needing more weapons, I think it goes along with that because right now we're waiting on Byron Pringle to be that other weapon, or DeMarcus Robinson to be that other weapon, or McCole Hardman to be that other weapon. And you've seen that they can't necessarily be that consistently. And if they can't be it consistently, you need to find someone who can be it more consistently.
The Hill element of it is what continues to be super interesting to me because Andy Reid has always coveted at least having one really fast field stretching receiver. Like Deshaun Jackson is the poster child of that in Philadelphia, of just a dude who was going to be open downfield behind your safeties twice a game forever, and he will do that until he's 80. And then, lots of other guys worked into that offense for lots of other successes. But Deshaun Jackson's the guy that I think of like just deep speed. And they draft McCole Hardman when Tyreek Hill has already become, to some extent, Tyreek bleeping Hill. But also they drafted him on a night that they weren't sure what Tyreek Hill's legal situation was going to be, right? And I understand that as well. But with where you're at as a roster constructed right now, especially last year, with all of this talk about who's that next weapon going to be, what can you get from McCole Hardman, and that evolution of Tyreek Hill, and even mentioning that McCole Hardman's best games typically come when Hill has been out, letting Hardman do some is doing a lot of work here, but let McCole Hardman do some of the Tyreek Hill's deadly speed things, and let Tyreek Hill be the guy that is absolutely impossible to predict what he'll do because he can do virtually everything at an elite level at this point. Like it seems like if you went in a route that direction, I don't know, maybe I'm oversimplifying it. I'm almost certainly oversimplifying it, but also maybe I'm taking Tyreek Hill somewhat out of position. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But it seems like if you could get 100% of your best stuff from McCole Hardman and then still get 90% of the best stuff you can get from Tyreek Hill, that might be a little bit better than trying to get 110.
Absolutely. And Hill has shown that he can thrive in any role.
Right.
And similar with Kelsey. And so the question becomes, what are you trying to accomplish there? And when you say things like, well, we want guys to be able to play all three receiver positions, some of the best advice I've ever gotten in terms of like when I was pastoring a church and we would do something, we're going to do this outreach, we're going to do that outreach. Some of the best advice I ever got from my dad, which, I usually just reference him on Times Ours, but I'm going to reference him here today, where he said, well, why? Mm-hmm. I was like, well, to do outreach. He's like, okay, well, why this? Because you have a finite amount of time and energy. So why is this the outreach you're doing? Because by necessity, what you're doing comes at a cost of doing other things, opportunity cost and all that. And so the question that I would ask in similar vein is, well, we want our guys to be able to play all three receiver positions. And the question is, well, why? Because, in case someone gets injured or that kind of stuff. Okay, well, if you're afraid of injuries, why don't you have 2 or 3 receivers that, can fit a certain role, like a lot of teams do, right? Mm-hmm. 2 or 3 receivers that fit one role, 2 or 3 receivers that fit another role, 2 or 3 receivers that fit another role. And ideally, you're going to be fine. And when you have like a freak like Tyreek Hill on your roster, and then another freak like Travis Kelce on your roster, that makes you a little more injury-proof because you've got 2 guys already that can be whatever you want them to be. Mm-hmm. Kelce's not going to be your down-the-field deep threat constantly. But you get my point overall, and that's where having it to where you're trying to train, like, your 4th best receiver to be able to play all 3 roles, I'm not sure that that's productive.
Right.
And so it's just one way of thinking about things that makes me it's an area where maybe things could be improved. Like maybe it also limits your draft possibilities.
Right.
Maybe that's one reason. And we can talk about missed guys all day. We can talk about DK Metcalf. Did anyone know what he'd become? Of course not. Mm-hmm. However, if they weren't into the idea, well, he needs to have a certain kind of quickness that he can play these various roles too, maybe they would have taken, because no one was arguing that Metcalf had incredible downfield speed and was a great deep ball threat.
Right.
But maybe because they thought, well, he needs to be able to play all 3 positions, you don't draft him. And again, I'm not saying that from insider knowledge or anything like that.
No, just an example.
I'm just carrying it to its logical conclusion that you're going to limit your field of talented players you can take. Maybe you don't take Deebo Samuel because you don't think he can be a down the field threat. right? Which he can, but it's just, again, it's an example. So that's something like the Hardman thing. I'm glad it brought us down this road because it's just an opportunity to think about, and this is what they need to be thinking about this offseason. They just had an unprecedented season in NFL history, as far as I'm aware, where it seems like they tested the boundaries of the spread RPO-based offense, throwing the ball 75-80% of the time. It seems like they tested the boundaries of that. And what they found, which is this is what, the anti-analytics crowd often claimed, generally without proof, because you should push the bounds until the thing starts to happen. But what we saw was defenses said, well, this sucks.
Right.
Right. We're getting the ball thrown all over us. Well, we also know that Andy Reid doesn't like to run the ball much and doesn't run the ball in specific ways all the time. Now, they started to alter that as the year went along. And then we saw that taken to its logical conclusion. And by the way, the Cincinnati defense, Mahomes was shredding some of these same looks in the first half. So part of it was Mahomes just played bad, a big part of it. But could they have changed things to where he could have maybe ended up playing average, or could have bounced out to where you don't need him to be like great for a full 4 quarters? Instead, you just need him to make great plays at times. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yep.
And this is where maybe that misses, where maybe you saw the culmination of the way teams were playing Mahomes. Because this year was the year it really changed, right? Last year, teams started blitzing him less and less, and it was a talking point. And this year, it was the given. You don't blitz Patrick Mahomes more than a couple times a game at most.
Yeah.
And this year, that other thing became a given. You don't do anything other than drop 7 or drop 8 and play really conservative looks and hope that your defensive line can win up front against the run. And even if you can't, it's not going to hurt you that much. So they need to. So this whole Tyreek Hill and McCole Hardman conversation might seem like it's, I don't know, like a corollary thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that they need to adjust is not personnel related. Something they need to look at this year isn't, well, we need this guy. Sure, if you had, Allen Robinson on the team in the playoffs, it would have made a difference. But what might make a bigger difference is asking yourself, okay, what direction is the league trending to stop Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs? Because they've become representative of the modern era of football, and teams are trying to build themselves to stop specifically what they've been doing.
So you mentioned this and already kind of set up and knocked down a couple pieces of it. And if people want to read the full thing, go to the Chief North newsletter, mnchiefsfan.substack.com. That's MN as in the abbreviation for Minnesota. I realized recently I should probably enunciate that better. mnchiefsfan.substack.com. You can read this for yourself. And every time I scroll past the backed up in their own end zone, McCole Hardman wide open over the middle, I get sad again. So I'm going to skip through some of that and try to get to the payoff, because I also want to ask what we're working on now, and also what's up on the newsletter now. So with the defense that the Bengals showed, you just laid out, they were doing a lot of the same stuff in the first half, and the Chiefs' offense was humming. In the second half, you get a terrible half from Patrick Mahomes, and also people start to latch on to this whole, like, oh, they're just legit rushing 3 here on a regular basis. Tell me what you think the Bengals defense did that was to their credit, I suppose, more than to Mahomes' blame or to the Chiefs' blame, and what you're not worried about in terms of what defenses are going to learn heading into 2022.
I think one of the things that it really is everything everyone's talking about in terms of having 8 in coverage. It allows you to play things differently. It allows you to play zone coverage in the middle of the field with those guys not just focusing on the receivers, because Mahomes can scramble at times against zones because he's fast enough, but it allows them to play like have a spy who's also playing zone, or even 2, to where it limits that scrambling ability while you play either man or man match coverage across the board really aggressively, which makes it tough for guys to get open quickly or even over a longer period of time, depending on what the route combinations are. And Cincy did a great job of that. They did a great job of having someone constantly hovering around where Hill is and trying to have someone constantly hovering around where Kelsey is. And that's what you can do when you've got 8 guys in coverage, right? Now, some of that, again, you and I have talked about this. Did he miss McCole Hardman on a look across the middle of the field that could have been like, 90-yard touchdown. Yeah. So it's not like there's this magic pill. What your goal is if you're a defense, is to take away everything easy and hope that it results in some flustering. Hope that by changing up what he's looking at, you can get him to speed up his process, and that's what he did. And he just played badly. The thing that I would say I'm worried about, if anything, is trying to find someone that Patrick Mahomes will trust consistently. And for that to happen, I think they're someone who needs to get open consistently. And so, you can find plays where Demarcus Robinson was open. However, because that's not always the case, or even necessarily often the case this year, Mahomes doesn't look his way as often, and you see that process get sped up. Now, is that a Mahomes issue? Sure. You want him to work on that throughout his career, right? So you're always going through every read before you speed anything up. However, given that there's 2 quarterbacks in history that have effectively mastered that skill set,
right?
Just because even Manning didn't always do that. Manning was pre-snap. Tom Brady looks at everyone all the time. He also has been doing this for longer than some guys in the league have been alive. And so, Mahomes will get better at that every year. So that's a given. He's already much better at it than he used to be. But finding a guy that you trust to win in those situations where teams are, even with 8 guys in coverage, to orbit around Kelsey and Hill, that means you're going to be leaving some guys alone against some aggressive man coverage. And you need someone that you trust when you're seeing that. Okay, I'm going to make him my next read. And that's what they had with Watkins. And that's why there was a year where he had, 90 targets. Because that's one thing I've heard people talking about is, Mahomes isn't going to look at him. I would say that if that was a Watkins type guy, he would. And the whole offense would benefit from it. It raises the consistency. The ceiling of the Chiefs offense is fine, and it's going to be. When by fine, I mean it's awesome. The floor of the offense should be pretty high. It's the consistency. And you want to narrow your margin for error, or raise your margin for error, by making that offense as consistent as possible. So that's the thing that I took away from that game that makes me think about next year, is that third weapon that can consistently do things on his own. The other thing is just schematic. Is Reed going to find a way to make teams pay for playing Patrick Mahomes in a way that no one has ever been played consistently? And that's on Reed to recognize, okay, we've done some historic crap over the last 4 years, and now history is biting back. There's a reason why what Mahomes has done has been historic, because normally it doesn't take the league 4 years to even... The league hasn't even caught up with him.
Right.
It's at least no longer at a 20-1 disadvantage. They've made it 20-5 or 20-10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they need to adjust to that. So that's the bigger thing, I think, from the Cincinnati level. There's so many people that are simplifying to, they should have just run the whole second half. And you know what? I could get behind that to an extent. After the first 2 drives went to crap, I can really get behind the idea of, okay, let's see if they can stop it if we just change up. The Chiefs need a change up, because the fastball, even if your fastball is 107 miles an hour and it's nothing the league has ever seen, eventually hitters start to time it. And even though you're still going to be the best, you're not going to be the best by as much or as consistently.
I think this just kind of puts a bow on everything you just said there and everything we're talking about earlier, because and also an eye to the sort of series unfolding now also at mnchiefsfan.substack.com. This is a loaded question. Please hear that I'm asking this in light of the conversation we just had. The answer could just be no, I suppose. Is there a type of receiver that you think they should or will target to try to alleviate some of those things? Does the type matter? Is it a trait? Is it literally just someone who's elite at something? How would you pick a receiver? Again, not the free agent of some current team, but just as a model for what they ought to be looking for.
I would want them to find a guy that frightens teams one-on-one. And however he does that, if he's an unbelievable route runner, right? You know what? This is going to sound insane because he looks like, a middle school teacher, but a Hunter Renfrow type.
He does look like a middle school teacher.
Yeah, he looks, and teams aren't, to use the word terrified, it's so goofy when you look at him.
Mm-hmm.
But he's really hard to defend one-on-one because he's a superb, unique kind of route runner. He moves weird. The way he runs routes. A guy like him, and you said not for specific examples, but I'm trying to give like the
no, that's great. A prototype,
the waves of the spectrum.
Yes.
DK Metcalf that people are terrified of leaving him one-on-one because he can win deep at any point and win contested ball situations. And Allen Robinson, who is a contested catch guy as well as a good route runner and physical. Chris Godwin, who's too good a route runner and has great hands. Right, whatever it is, something that makes teams afraid and can make teams pay consistently to the point that they have to factor it into their defensive scheme for leaving him one-on-one. That's what I think would continue to unlock and allow their ceiling to stay as high and their consistency to stay as high as it has been the last 4 years. And right now, that's how the Chiefs are built to win, is by having an overpowering, dominating offense. So that's where I would just say, any kind of guy, whether it's a Renfrow type or a Godwin type or a Mike Evans type. Well, Mike Evans is just awesome. I mean, like that's not really fair. But like someone that teams are definitively afraid to leave alone and we're just gonna play physical against this dude. You're not gonna see teams, we're gonna press man Devontae Adams and leave him one-on-one all day. He'd have like 400 yards.
Right.
Now Adams isn't fair because he's arguably the best receiver in the league. Sure. But some guy that can make teams pay, like Sammy could when he was healthy. Unfortunately, we very rarely saw the offense operate at that capacity. And so finding someone that you can count on to be healthy consistently, if you think Juju Smith-Schuster is a guy that can consistently make teams pay for man coverage, great. And I think that's why they're interested in him, because he's a guy that can make you pay if you play him one-on-one a lot.
I love that as the starting point there. Someone that can make you pay for leaving them one-on-one. I also love the idea that I could have asked you that question and then had DK Metcalf and Hunter Renfrow both standing shirtless in front of you, and you'd be like, "Oh, either one of these guys would be good."
Yeah, I'll take either one.
Either one really would be great. I think either one of these guys would be exactly what this offense needs. Either DK Metcalf, who looks like DK Metcalf, or Hunter Renfrow, who looks like Hunter Renfrow. Just makes me very happy. I've already kept you for too long, so instead of diving into to the beginning of some of your off-season work, why don't you give people the Cliff's Notes version they can go read up on the Substack, and we'll have plenty of off-season time to dive into it all. So we're not even going to spoil it here on AES tonight. You got to go read this bleep. $12 a year. Are you kidding me?
Sure. I'm starting my usual off-season series. If I were Brett Veach. Before that, it was if I were John Dorsey, because I've been doing this for a minute.
Actually, Seth has always said if I was Brett Veach, but that was while he was like getting Andy Reid's coffee, and it was very confusing.
I knew some stuff.
Those
articles were very boring.
If I were Brett Veach, I would get Andy Reid's coffee, however he ordered it, and then I would get him a cheeseburger, however he ordered it.
Bring it to him on time.
I'd be on time.
Yeah. No, those, I really like that idea. That's funny.
I do too.
So right now I'm talking about kind of a roadmap for the offseason for the newsletter, as well as looking at the roster from 10,000 feet in the air if you're Brett Veach, and some things that he might want to really hammer on. And then I'm going to talk about some fun with the salary cap. So because that's where, and it's not the last time I'm going to have to write about the cap this offseason, but I'm basically going to write about how do I get the Chiefs from 10 million in cap space to 60 million in cap space in 2022 with another 90 in 2023, and that's without everyone under contract, mind you. But even if you take into account the veteran minimums they used to fill out the roster, future salaries, how can they sign Charvarius Ward and Orlando Brown long term? How can they bring back some guys that they really want to bring back while still having enough room to make a splash signing, which I think they've got the room to do. So I'm going to kind of talk about that. I wrote a really in-depth article on it last year, so I'm going to touch on some of those main points and then just kind of do a roadmap for the offseason, and then we're going to get started on those, and I'm going to really push to try to get Orlando Brown and Charvarius Ward's film reviewed to really give a good idea for what I think it would be worth retaining them for and signing them for long term.
I'm really excited to see what you find on both of those guys. If you are as well, you can go subscribe right now. mnchiefsfan.substack.com, bit.ly/Seth Really Hates Money is the link that'll get you to the $12 a year number. And again, I'm going to tell Seth every time we speak. I'm going to say, you should raise the price of this newsletter. You're giving this bleep away for free. And even if eventually Seth does fall to my pressures, if you lock in a rate right now, I can promise you he will not raise the rate you sign up for. So if you sign up for $12 right now and I get him to make it $200 starting tomorrow, you get to keep it at that $12 price. And I think I'm getting close to making it $1,200 a year. So you should really go lock in $12 a year while you can. Seth, thank you as always. Looking forward to talking again next week and getting into some real salary cap nerd stuff. I do enjoy that part of the off season and looking forward to it.
That sounds like fun. Thanks for having me.
Joe's Kansas City Barbecue has made their New Year resolution, and it's to serve more barbecue.
is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
Anyway, thanks again to Jordan Foote for joining us last segment. Sneeze emoji, sneeze emoji, sneeze emoji.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
We're kind of playing with the space-time continuum right now, which is fun. Talked about multiverses on this show. Really a strange amount of time for a show that is almost entirely about sports. But the fun thing right now is that I'm here, Josh Brisco, with Rudy Salazar and Jordan Foote. You heard his name in the liner. It means he's here with us for the hour. You can follow him on Twitter, @FootNoted. You can check out his work at arrowheadreport.com, Inside the Crown on SI, and, of course, right here for us here at Sports Radio 810 WHB. But the funny thing, and I'm just going to lay it out here, sometimes in radio, sometimes in media, this is going to shock a lot of people. Sometimes things are taped in advance. I know, I know that right now, Jordan and Rudy, you guys are falling to the ground to clutch your ears, your eyes, your heart over your mouth, any number of absolute fear responses.
Speak
because
for
I have
yourself.
just delivered a secret.
I never tape anything.
Well, so
I'm live all the time.
Rudy's always live, 24/7, 365. Here's the space-time continuum rip that we have yanked out here for tonight's Almost Entirely Sports. As you are hearing this, as these words are going out over the airwaves right now, revealing the magician's tricks, Jordan and I are somewhere in the city of Los Angeles, California. I think we might be on our way to or at the Lakers game. Which, if that's true, you should also look at our Twitters, because I'm sure our Twitter during that will be fantastic. Or during this, I should say. But we have to, we wanted to give you some nice, spicy, fresh AES out of the oven. And so we decided to knock this out ahead of time before we made our way out to Radio Row. Jordan, here in the future past, which is what I think we're in right now. I think we're in the future past. By the way, also, hopefully this is all still good and relevant. I think it should all be fine. As long as Eric Bieniemy doesn't get the Saints job, I think we're probably okay. But that would also imply that Eric Bieniemy would get an NFL head coaching job, which
means that
hasn't been an
definitely nothing new will happen.
Yeah, we're good actually, aren't we? Yeah, all right. So this is.
I will say though, we say that, but then it's in the moments where you're like, oh, news is definitely not going to break. Then news is going to break. So maybe this is just what Bieniemy needed all along.
Well, look, one thing I know for sure is that the Houston Texans aren't going to hire their head coaching candidate from inside their own staff of last year. I know that for a fact, and there's no way that the future's going to make me sound dumb about that one.
Well,
that one was a joke. That we were recording as well after the Leslie Frazier news. Leslie Frazier? What? Lovie Smith? Why did I make him Leslie Frazier? Oh, God. The Lovie Smith news. That is hilarious. But also kind of to the side. Hopefully, no more news has broken. Hopefully, the Saints haven't hired Leslie Frazier, I guess. Jordan, how are you doing right now in this future past that we're in?
This was almost, I don't know how long we are time-wise, but we're good for the delay. Every time I come on, usually 4 minutes or so.
3 minutes and 20 seconds.
So a little short, but considering everything and it's not a call in any of that stuff, that's pretty good. I was going to suggest we could have done an AES remote from Staples. No, not from Staples, from Crypto.com Arena.
Thank you.
From the Crypt. And I think the city of Los Angeles would willingly allow Josh Brisco, Rudy, and probably not me, but at least you two to do it from there.
We could have done a play-by-play right now. Oh, hold on. Well, I'm looking out there right now. Oh, and Russell Westbrook just missed a jumper. Wow, what a game.
Doesn't sound like him.
Yeah, that's a unique occurrence right there. Did LeBron dunk or something? You got to give me more than that.
Nope, that was the extent of my Lakers.
Anthony Davis played a basketball game without getting hurt. Cool boy.
You really are calling a shot, huh? I'm excited.
I don't know if he's healthy.
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, as people are hearing this, you can just check out the box score right now. But here in the future past, I don't know who we're going to see. I'm very excited though, Jordan, for the ability to see LeBron James in his what's going to be remembered as his first bad season, and Giannis Antetokounmpo in his first season after winning his only NBA title. I think that's really exciting.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean
only title ever for the record.
Yes, I know.
Okay,
and I wonder why that is. But speaking of the Phoenix Suns, man, when I was a student down at ASU, and it seems like I mention that one time every episode, every time I come on, but when I was a student down there, I went down to a couple games, and man, I just wasn't impressed. The basketball during the 2017 season obviously was not very good, so that's a major component of it. I believe that was the game that Isaiah Canaan broke his leg. So that was traumatizing. The arena I just wasn't extremely impressed by. It's the only NBA arena I've been to. I've never been to a Thunder game or anything like that. So I don't have anything against the Suns, but I'm glad that we're going to be in Los Angeles or are in Los Angeles, depending on how people look at this. There's nothing better than the Crypt or Staples. I'm going to be calling it Staples. I call the Chargers San Diego still to this day, and they haven't been there in a few years. There's nothing better than the Crypt. Lakers, Bucks. I mean, what better, despite how lackluster the Lakers have been this season, what better matchup than that? It's not the Clippers, it's the Lakers, which means people come to see LeBron, people come to see Anthony Davis, some sickos out there, they come to see Russell Westbrook, man. Like, whether he's good or bad, he is a fun player to watch. I think even when he's bad, it's chaotic. The crowd was booing him the other night. You know, it's an all-time low for him, but also an all-time high. And I think that you mix that in with Giannis and the Bucks and how good they are. It's a recipe for disaster, but also a recipe for a darn good basketball game.
Yeah, I'm excited just because of the number of guys that we're going to be able to check off our collective boxes and be able to say, you know, when I saw LeBron play with my own eyes, he was the greatest basketball player I've ever seen in person. Although that, you know, there's going to be some other guys out on the court that are going to be able to have some all-time arguments. I'm excited for that.
I've seen Devin Booker in person.
So, I have.
So is LeBron the best player you've ever seen in person? Some people are saying, I don't know. You've probably seen Alex Len, or I don't know when you went, but it could have been Alex Len or Dario Saric or oh man,
I mean, just so many Suns legends.
I've tried to block out. Yeah, I've tried to block out the bad Suns players over the past few years, and there have been plenty of them, but. I don't know, Josh. When did you go see them, or was it like a multiple, like different year type thing?
No, so it's funny because you laying all that out from your son's experience. I guess both of us have seen the Phoenix Suns play as our only NBA game we've seen in person in Arizona. So that's a fun thing we have in common.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out right now when it was that I saw. It was Mavericks Suns, and I was thinking it was on my actual birthday, which is December 23rd. But Mavs and Suns played December 23rd, 2020, and it definitely wasn't that. So I'm trying to find exactly when that was that I made my pilgrimage to Phoenix to see. I mean, I went to go see my grandma, really, but like, you know, we were there for a basketball game. I'm gonna get the exact date. I think they had both Morris twins at the time.
So you went to go see a Suns game, and then you just so happened to run into your grandma while you were down in Phoenix.
That's right. Yeah, I stopped by, crashed on her couch for a day, and then went back to sleeping in a tent outside of the arena, just in hopes of touching the hem of Devin Booker's jacket.
I've had the chance to see that I remember at least 3 Hall of Famers live. I've only been to 2 NBA games, but I got to watch Carmelo Anthony. Actually, now that I think about it, I know 4. Carmelo Anthony, Chauncey Billups, Allen Iverson, and Dirk Nowitzki.
Okay.
And
that's a pretty good list for 2 games total.
All pale in comparison to just the greatest, J.R. Bleeping Smith.
Man, Nuggets, dude.
I was at the Nuggets game against the Nets when the Nets' best player at that time was Keon Dooling, Missouri fame. And J.R. Smith took 2 very bad threes to start the game off, was immediately benched. George Karl threw him back out there, and then he hit 13 straight threes in a row to set an NBA record for most threes in a game. I believe he has since been surpassed. But I was there to watch J.R. Smith make history. Oh, boy, it was something.
He was so fun. He was such a good athlete back then, too. Like, he would jump over people, and obviously the off-the-court stuff makes him even more legendary. Nuggets, J.R. was good. The Nuggets had some good teams.
The Nuggets got Allen Iverson because J.R. Smith literally started a fight in Madison Square Garden, which got both him and Melo suspended. So the Nuggets were like, oh, we got to get somebody else who can score points here. So they went out and traded for AI, which ultimately got them Chauncey Billups. So it's just, I mean, J.R. Smith starting to fight in Madison Square Garden just started the best, one of the better Nuggets, playoff runs of my life.
Yeah.
So I have found the box score here where the Suns were victorious 124-115. I have to amend something, as I was also thinking this was some early Devin Booker. There was no Devin Booker anywhere near this godforsaken basketball game.
Oh boy.
This was PJ Tucker, both Morrises, Alex Lynn, Goran Dragic, Eric Bledsoe, Isaiah Thomas off the bench. This was in the 3-point guards era.
Okay.
And the high flying event that was, I did get to see, apparently. I don't remember this detail very well. Apparently I got to see 29 minutes of Dirk Nowitzki, though. So, and Rajon Rondo. That was the basketball game that I saw in whatever I just said, 2014. I am hoping that tonight / tomorrow / yesterday, depending on when you're listening to this game, I am hoping that I do get LeBron, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, Giannis. That would be my hope.
I'm trying to think of if there's a sneaky Melo. Oh, Melo's day-to-day, he has that hamstring, so it might not be Melo. Who else on that team? Because the Lakers are all old, obviously. Who else on that team? The Bucks don't really have anyone like Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday. I don't think that Holiday's a Hall of Famer. I don't think Middleton's a Hall of Famer.
How dare you.
I don't remember, I know it's relatively easy to get into the Basketball Hall of Fame, but, is Chris Middleton with no awards? He's just a good player, and do good players with rings end up making it on that basis? I can't think of any Lakers who are over the age of 30 who may or may not. Stanley Johnson's not a Hall of Famer. He's also not 30. Malik Monk isn't a Hall of Famer. Avery Bradley is not a Hall of Famer. Dwight Howard.
One more name you haven't said yet that I forgot was on the Lakers.
Dwight Howard's on the Lakers. I know that.
DeAndre Jordan is on the Lakers too.
Oh, he has been wasting away on the bench, and they don't play him anymore.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. I didn't remember this either.
Does he have a new crazy haircut like Dwight got when he went to the Lakers?
I think it's the same, dude. He just has lost his athleticism, and now that's all he had, pretty much.
Got Austin
Reeves.
I
love the phrase DeAndre Jordan has lost his athleticism. He's 33, almost 34 years old, so I get it.
He could probably still jump over me, but it's compared to other
compared
NBA
to his
athletes.
prime.
Easily. Yeah, he would go absolutely soaring.
But you definitely get to watch Shockers legend Austin Reeves, who may or may not have transferred out because former coach may or may not been going around punching players. Who can say?
Well, we're getting to dangerous territory here.
I said may or may not.
No, for me, it's actually another thing.
What's that? Austin Reeves, Shocker legend?
He could be a Hall of Famer.
If you type Austin Reeves, Greg Marshall into Google, the first autofill is Austin Reeves, Greg Marshall daughter.
Oof.
Oh, boy. I don't
Right?
I don't know if he has. I know he has a son. I don't remember him having a daughter, though.
Also, Austin Reeves, that you know what? That could have just been Google being a creep. You know how if you type any athlete, the first word after that athlete's name is always wife or girlfriend?
He also might have a daughter. I don't fully know, but I do know he left, and Wichita State people were very unhappy, and the student newspaper wrote a pretty they attacked him, which was interesting. And then of course a couple years later, the news comes out that Greg Marshall punched the player in the back of the head. And it was this is why everybody was leaving. That makes sense.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
But
here's a weird path that this show can take here tonight. Hi, I'm Austin Reeves, former point guard for the Wichita State Shockers and Oklahoma Sooners. AMA.
Boomer Sooner.
He did an AMA 8 months ago. Why did you leave Wichita State? A Redditor asked. He said, I thought it was a good opportunity for me to showcase my talent on a level that people said I could not play at. Somebody else said, there's some nasty rumors. And he said, I really enjoyed my 2 years at Wichita State. Coach and the program gave me the opportunity to be in the situation that I am in now. And that does sound sort of like a player who was ready to get the F out of there.
Yep. I mean, everybody was legitimately stunned because, again, at that time, it's not obviously he says, he wants to play. Yeah, sure, I can play at a higher level. But, Wichita State at the time was, that was an Elite 8, Sweet 16 caliber team. Everybody was stunned. And then, again, you start learning all this stuff. And you're oh, not that surprised, really.
No.
And I'm not saying Austin Reeves was ever hit or anything. It's just like, my guess is you get a coach who yells a lot, and then I can say I have heard Greg Marshall say some pretty horrible things verbally. I can confidently say that. I don't know if I forget anything physical, but just the emotional toll that would take.
Rudy, are you trying to say they're not radio appropriate things that Greg Marshall said?
No, they're not appropriate to say. They're not on the radio.
No, they are non-human being.
You should never say them.
Yeah.
They should literally never be said.
Builds character. That was a well-built team. That was an era, man.
I have two more incredible pieces of Austin Rivers information here for
Austin
us.
Rivers or Austin Reeves?
Reeves. Austin Rivers is a Nuggets legend.
You heard me. We're on to Austin Rivers now. Nope, I meant Austin Reeves, and you guys, thank you. Appreciate it. So someone asked, what is the most ferocious animal you think you could take down in a fight? Which I would also like us to all answer that question, please, so begin thinking. Austin Reeves says one really aggressive duck. He feels like he could take it down. What's the most ferocious animal you think you could take in a fight?
I mean, duck, I feel confident. Goose, no way. And heck, don't mess with a goose, man.
I could break Goose's neck.
It's like goose and like poodle, or like two animals that you feel like you can beat up, but like no. But
anything that I could kick like a football, I'm good.
Yeah, maybe coyote.
Do you remember seeing the Rudy and I saw a couple of coyotes after a show one night, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. And if that thing would have turned, I started walking after it because
of course.
That's who I am. Yeah, I don't have a good answer, for why I am what I am. But I started walking after the coyote, not after, but just towards the area they had passed through. I wanted to see if I could get a closer look. I like coyotes. I do think if that thing would have turned at me with foaming mouth and just come charging my direction, I would not have stood there for the fight. I would have turned my back and maybe Rudy and I could have teamed up to keep it back.
I think it's fair, but I do think there are people essentially when you hear like vicious coyote, you think more wolf, and those are two very different.
True.
They're like wolf, of course not. Wolf is tearing me apart.
Yeah.
Coyote, maybe. I'm not saying full yes, because I don't know if there's an animal, a really vicious animal that I feel that comfortable taking down. I mean, if a spider had its eyes set on me, I'm sprinting for the hills. I don't want nothing to do with that. I've had aggressive kittens make me cry, right?
Sure.
I don't feel confident about taking out any animal, but maybe coyote, maybe.
Hey, real quick, everybody, don't kick or punch
animals.
or do anything violent to any animals, okay? We're just having fun. Please be kind to animals. Jordan, what would your answer be?
Man, I remember very, very, very vaguely there was a question on Twitter about that, and I was trying my darndest to find it because I knew that you replied and were very, very, very shocked with my answer because you thought I was punching above my weight, but I can't remember what animal. Elephant was one of them, and I searched elephant, I couldn't find it. Kangaroo was one of them, I searched kangaroo, I couldn't find it. I don't know when it was or what it was, which is zero help because now I can't remember my answer, but there was a very distinct cutoff where I was like, I could take this, I could take this, I could take this, I could take this. No way. It's not like there wasn't any gray area where I was like, well, if I'm really ticked off and if my life depended on it, it was like, yes, heck no.
The issue for me searching after it now is that so many of these are also the names of professional sports teams.
Yeah.
That you have tweeted about Bears and Wolves plenty of times, but it's about Chicago and Minnesota.
Yeah,
I could take down a Chicago Bear.
I think so too. Those are already halfway down anyway.
Yeah.
I think coyote would be my cutoff. I'd try really, really hard. I don't know if I'd succeed. But what's the scale here? What other ferocious animals? A raccoon? Could you take a raccoon? I think.
Man, don't mess with a raccoon.
I think that we can take a raccoon.
Raccoon, because here's the thing. I feel like a coyote. I'm not here to say coyotes are dumb, but I feel like they might get in a one-track mind, right? The brain stops working as well, and it's just going. Raccoons are sly, man. Raccoons got traps. They got plans. They're executing. Don't mess with raccoons.
Raccoons and possums. Josh would just actively let them kill him. He wouldn't fight. He wouldn't dare fight back, even if he was on his deathbed.
It would be impossible. Here's my last Austin Reeves point here. I'm so glad we're doing this segment this way. Here's my last Austin Reeves point here. This is his username on Reddit is Austin Reeves HBK12. Okay? Someone asked, what does HBK stand for in your username? His response, Hillbilly Kobe.
Wow. Oh, that's right. I totally forgot. His nickname, because he's from Arkansas, was Hillbilly Kobe. Wow. He is from some like Garnett, basically, but of Arkansas. And that I totally forgot that was his nickname in like high school.
He's kind of a meme, but like he's a decent player. Like he can play. I was arguing the Lakers should have started him earlier in the year. Like he's one of those guys that everyone makes fun of him, and he's more of a meme when he enters the game. But like he can actually kind of play, and I think those are the best kind of players. Like Boban with the Mavericks, the 7'3".
Legend.
Like Boban has the crazy advanced stats. Everyone loves him. He can play in spurts. Like Austin Reeves, he can actually play. Like he is a borderline starting caliber guy. But how do you beat Hillbilly Kobe? That's one of the best nicknames ever.
Good.
And also, I mean, again, that is way pre-NBA here. This is from an AMA where he was getting ready for the draft process. So there's a pretty good aligning of the stars.
Authentic.
Yeah, truly. Well, I'm glad we're talking about this.
It's also so much better because like you'll get it quite a bit, like especially like in soccer where it's like everybody, like every country has like their Messi, right? So it'd be like the Canadian Messi, the Malaysian Messi. But this is like, no, he's not the Arkansas Kobe Bryant. No. He represents the hillbillies.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it is it is just much better than just a region or area. It's just out of all the hillbillies in the world, he is the hillbilly Kobe Bryant.
Isn't there a LeBron James? Have you seen those videos?
Yes.
There's this guy who wears overalls and he lives on a farm and he has like a basketball set up in his barn. They call him LeBron James, and he's actually pretty good. And he like impersonates different players and all that stuff. Like that is what I imagine Hillbilly Kobe being. Austin Reeves obviously is not that, but I actually haven't heard him speak either. I've watched plenty of Laker game this year, but I haven't heard an Austin Reeves interview.
Yeah.
He's pretty unassuming.
I'm a little stunned that he doesn't do more post-game press conferences on the team with LeBron James, Russell Westbrook, and Anthony Davis.
Like there's no star power on that team that people would want to interview. Like I can't. Right. What is more attracting as a media member than Austin Reeves?
I'm a little surprised nobody wanted to talk to him after LeBron just like stared at him when he wasn't looking, just like give him that death stare, just like this.
That you're getting traded.
This hillbilly's on this team. He thinks he's Kobe. Jesus.
Do you guys remember who it might have been Dante DiVincenzo. He certainly had his moment.
White Dante.
But right, it just the phenomenon. Tyler Hero has a little bit of it, I guess, too.
Stop.
But the phenomenon of just like open their mouth and you do not expect what you hear come out of it. It's always so fun. It's
Tyler Hero's
just a harmless, funny thing.
Yeah.
He definitely has it, for sure.
Tyler has it. I'm trying to think of who else has it. DiVincenzo kind of has it.
That video of Hero with Bam and Jimmy Butler, I almost said Jimmy Haslam. Jimmy Butler is one of my favorite videos I've ever watched.
Yeah, he's an interesting character.
I think that is what I'm thinking of. Oh, so good.
Such a good video.
Fantastic. This is a weird, by the way, so as we've already acknowledged the space-time continuum, KU's result Monday night. What a game, huh? And
can't believe they lost. It's crazy.
Well, no, they won. It depends.
But probably lost.
Christian Brown is like really continuing to evolve down that Tyler Hero path, and I'm just really happy about that. I feel like that path and evolution for him is a really powerful one.
So before the season, I forget who we were comparing players to, but Josh was like, well, a kind of an overhyped player that people think is cool to talk about, but he's really not that good. And he was like, is Tyler Hero a good example? I was like, no, Tyler Hero's not a good example. Granted,
he's a legend.
When he said that, Tyler Hero was having a sophomore slump. Like, he really wasn't that good.
There's no such thing as a sophomore slump when you're Tyler Hero. You're just a little sleepy. You get a little bored.
That's true. He was a little sleepy.
The NBA competition's not always up to snuff.
Yeah, that's true.
You need a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, now he's being challenged. He's playing better. I forget who we were just talking about now.
Christian Brown.
Christian Brown.
Tyler Hero path.
He's an athletic guard he could be that guy. I mean, he has a little. He can create for himself. He's a good shooter. He's really come on strong for KU, man. KU's had a bunch of different guys throughout the year. Dave McCormick has that chart where it's like his offensive rebounding percentage is like 50 times the next closest guy in the country, and then you watch him and like he drops the ball every time he gets it. He doesn't like throw his weight around. Like KU has a bunch of interesting characters and guys that you expect to get more minutes or fewer minutes. They have a good shot. I know that some people in this taping right now are partial to Kentucky just a little bit. Kansas has a shot.
Kansas is good. I do remember in, I'm not going to throw out names here, people telling me how Dave McCormick is actually a much better rebounder than Oscar Sheboy, who leads college basketball and rebounding. And then, Kentucky did what they did to Kansas. And
yeah, I was going to say, have they played this year, Rudy? I don't remember a Kansas-Kentucky matchup. I kind of wiped it from my memory. I think KU beat them down so bad.
No. It's not quite what
UK.
happened.
Okay, I flipped it. Yeah.
Yeah, Kentucky's pretty good.
Yeah, they have a decent coach, too. He's all right.
They were beating the number one team in the nation until Ty Washington got hurt because Ty Ty's that guy.
I love Ty, man. I do, and this is no surprise
Former
to
Suns legend because he's a Phoenix kid, so Sarver's going to give up everything for him.
This is no surprise to either of you. I am a big NBA draft head. Ty, one of my favorite players, man. He's a lottery pick without a doubt. He's probably top 10, I think. He's darn good. Kansas, Abachi, man, I just don't know what his role, or I guess his ceiling. His role is going to be spot up off the ball, be athletic, defend, all that good stuff. I think there might be more to him, man. And it took, this is his fourth year at Kansas. It took him long enough to grow into this role. The NBA just isn't as patient. I think Brown, he has a very defined floor and ceiling. I think as a player, Abachi, I'm really excited to see where he goes because he could be a lottery pick. He could go to a decent team. He could go to a really bad team and get more minutes. Kansas, they hang their hats on Wiggins and Embiid, all-star starting forward Andrew Wiggins at that, which is a different conversation for another day. But I'd like to see more talent come out of KU and actually thrive. Ben McLemore kind of flopped. Oubre's been up and down. I'd like to see KU get more guys like that.
Tsunami popping.
Just as we've discussed our space-time continuum issue here, we've talked about inexplicably. I walked us over to KU basketball, which is the one thing we absolutely should not have talked about in this segment. But now we're here. So Rudy, if you can just go ahead and edit this up after the fact, so we sound smart afterwards.
For sure.
Why don't we all just give a different KU Texas sort of post-game recap take? I'll go first, and you guys can give one, and then Rudy, you just save the one that sounds the most accurate.
For sure.
Okay. And so you don't want to, you want to keep it pretty vague, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so here comes mine down in 3, 2, 1. That's a great point, Jordan. I really do like Ochai Agbaji. I think especially after he went for 89 points in the first half last night, it's going to be really hard to keep him out of that National Player of the Year conversation. Frankly, I'm on takeathon.com right now, and actually, he is the #1 prospect on their big board. He went shooting up that roster after putting up 89 in the first half. Unfortunately, just put up 10 in the second. You really would have thought that Bill Self would have put him back out there to try to get that even 100, but 99 points, 14 rebounds, and 7 fouls, which that was confusing, but that's what the final stat line was. What a game for Ochai Agbaji and a heartbreaking loss for Kansas.
Beautiful. Got it.
Rudy, you want to go ahead and take yours here now? Rudy's KU Texas postgame roundup here in 3, 2.
They really went hard after him in the offseason, but I am stunned that Chris Beard fired at halftime.
Yeah,
I know the year hasn't been great. They haven't quite lived up to the expectations. But he's a new coach in. He was just this isn't his team. You think the man would deserve a little time, but fired at halftime.
You know what that was, Rudy? That decision to fire Chris Beard at halftime.
What was it?
From Texas.
Yep.
That was a shaka. You thought I was done with the shaka puns. You were wrong.
That wasn't very smart, was it?
To take a page out of Eric Bledsoe's book, I don't want to be here.
I don't want to be here. That phrase still hurts me to this day.
It was crazy when Eric Bledsoe showed up in that game. I did not see that coming.
Good news, Jordan, is that if Rudy and I's predictions didn't come wrong, no one will ever hear it. So why don't you go ahead and give us your KU Texas recap here in 3, 2, 1.
I can't believe it. Kansas, they have the star power. They have Ochai Agbaji. They have Christian Brown. They have Jalen Wilson. They have Dave McCormick. They have Remy Martin, who hasn't even done anything. It was Michael Jankovic and Chris Teahan self-emptied the bench to start the second half, and they led the way. This Kansas team, dude, they're hot and cold. They'll probably get blown out by whoever they play. They'll get blown out by Oklahoma on Saturday. But for now, man, Kansas with a statement victory on the backs of their 2 lowest scoring players on the year. You're only as good as your worst player, and apparently Kansas is the greatest basketball team of all time.
And scene. All right, that's great. So, Rudy, just make sure, Rudy, I cannot stress this enough again, because we do not want people to know that we recorded this in advance, because Jordan and I are currently in LA as it would be playing right now.
Yeah.
So it is so important. It is so important that you edit this whole part out and that none of this makes it to air on Tuesday.
No, I mean, that's not a. Here's Josh. When have I ever laid down?
Never.
Never done my job.
No, I really never. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page.
We got
trust you as a producer. I mean, yeah, no question. I just, a lot of moving parts here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick it up here, and then again, as long as none of this part made it to air, we're good. And then I'll just throw it a break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about something else, and no one will even have known that this wasn't live tonight.
I mean, hey, maybe one of us is right, and
right. One of us should be right. That's what I'm saying. Leave that in.
There's a chance.
Just cut out the 2 wrong ones in all of this conversation.
These are not outlandish takes by any means.
No, I think I will be right about whatever I said. And I'll go ahead and throw it to break here in 3, 2. Yep, a fantastic game in the Big 12 for KU and Texas in lots of vague terms. We'll take a break here on Almost Entirely Sports and come back and talk about the other news of the day. Hopefully not Eric Bieniemy being hired in the last 12 hours, because that would really throw a wrench in some things.
For 11 years, Breaking the Norm has presented the best and most uplifting stories in sports, entertainment, and business, and we wouldn't be here without our amazing partners and you, our faithful listeners. Your stories of life change, loving others, and inspiration keep us dedicated to making a difference in the world, one story at a time. Tune in Tuesdays at 4 p.m. on ESPN Kansas City 94.5 FM and Saturday mornings at 7 on Sports Radio 810 WHB for something good, something positive, and something real on Breaking the Norm.
As a Shane Company jewelry consultant, I get to work with couples looking for their dream engagement ring. Many feel overwhelmed. They just don't know where to start. And that's what I love about my job. I get to make this important experience fun and easy. We don't work on commission, so there's no pressure. When you visit, first, I'll want to know, what are your ideas for your dream ring? What fits your lifestyle, your personality, your budget? Then we'll go from there. We'll look at ring settings and I'll show you options for the center stone. For example, if you choose a classic solitaire ring setting, I can show you how it'll look with different center stones, like a pear-shaped diamond or an oval pink sapphire.
Of the Chiefs trying to address the end spot. What is it that made that number one for you on this list? Why is that the one that ultimately did rise above a couple other positions that also have some real like actual questions about them?
Well, I think they could need two of them. And cornerback, they could end up needing two. But I mean, if you have three starting guys, they're going to have Snead and Rashad Fenton. So, and the Chiefs have a much better track record, I think, of finding low investment, high value cornerbacks. I think that's kind of their brand at this point with Brett Veach. Frank Clark made a big amount of money, a heaping amount of money. His contract was huge. Mike Dana is a young two down type defensive end kind of. Joshua Kando he was a flyer, essentially an athletic guy who didn't even really play. He was redshirted essentially with injuries and all that good stuff, being buried in the depth chart. Alex Okafor, rotational guy. Melvin Ingram, good player, but not a guy that the Chiefs need to bank on playing all three downs for an entire season next year at the age of 33 or however old he's going to be. The Chiefs have a lot of work to do, man, if they want to build a formidable pass rush, if they want to help out the secondary. It goes both ways. Like, a good coverage unit can make up for a bad defensive line. I think the good defensive line can help the cornerbacks almost as much, if not more. The Chiefs might need two starting defensive ends this offseason, and that is a very tough place to be. They're going to be saving some money from the Clark contract if they get rid of him, if Tyrann Mathieu isn't re-signed, stuff like that. So, I mean, actually having the capability to do it, not a huge problem. They have picks. They're going to have some money. Actually going out and doing it and finding that value, that's going to be the hard part.
Jordan, I imagine we'll hear from you in some form or fashion on this show over the remainder of this week as we broadcast live from Radio Row starting tomorrow night. Here tonight, we've just merely woven the threads of space and time to bring Almost Entirely Sports to our beloved listeners here tonight. Thank you for helping us do that. And, wow, did you see that pass that Austin Reeves just made to, what's that? Shaq? Shaq is playing. What a game!
Oscar Robertson just came out and suited up for the Bucks, or oh no, that's Kareem. My bad. No, he's playing for both teams. Kareem's playing for both teams as we speak. He has one of those half and half Lakers Bucks jerseys. Holy smokes!
Is that Wilt? Thank you, Jordan. You can follow him on Twitter at Footnoted. He'll be doing stuff for us here on 810, obviously, all week long, live from L.A. on Radio Row. He's going to have so much content, so many things, presumably so many moments of capturing me doing something dumb with a guest on this show. Looking forward to that whole experience. Follow him on Twitter at Footnoted. You can check out his work at arrowheadreport.com, also on Inside the Royals on SI's Fan Nation Network. We'll take a break here on Almost Entirely Sports. Whenever we come back, I'm not completely sure what's going to happen because we're, unstuck from time, which makes for pretty fun radio.
With PatriotSoftware.com.
hometown sports station. Sports Radio 810 WHB Kansas City.
You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports.
So, Matt, in the last month or so, in what way has your baby most tried to ruin your life?
That's a great question. How has she tried to ruin my life? Well, I was holding her a couple weeks ago, and the Chiefs were playing Washington in the fourth quarter, and it was obviously a tight game, and all of a sudden I realized that she was just peeing all over me. So that was
with Joshua Brisco.
And there have been many times where I've been targeted, shall we say, if I may be.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Continuing on, a bit of an odd version of Almost Entirely Sports here tonight. Now, you might be thinking, fairly, I would argue, Josh, what an absolutely ridiculously redundant thing for you to say out loud. A weird Almost Entirely Sports? Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Fair enough. That's not necessarily new in this neck of the woods, but it is a little bit differently weird here tonight, as you may have caught us referring to, as we talked to the one and only Jordan Foote, who also made jokes about Eric Bieniemy not getting the Saints job literally like 2 minutes before it was announced that Eric Bieniemy would not be getting the Saints job. We are currently, our physical bodies, even as you hear this right now over the air, are in Los Angeles, California. We're there for Radio Row. We'll be broadcasting from Radio Row Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Going to have tons of great guests, tons of great Chiefs discussions, I'm sure, Super Bowl discussions, and also just the fun people you meet at Radio Row. That will begin for The Zone with Jason Anderson from 10 to 2, and then for Almost Entirely Sports, 7 to 10. Those 3 days, starting Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we'll be there broadcasting live from LA. But because we had to actually, travel to Los Angeles over the course of this day today, we ended up having we did a little different. AES went a little different here tonight. Got to hear from Seth Keysor and Jordan Foote, a couple of hot and fresh out the kitchen conversations. But this last hour here tonight, we're going to get a little help from ourselves from last week. If you may have missed a couple of highlights, I feel like you ought to hear them here. And if you've already heard them, got on the podcast page or whatever, listen to them again. It's up to you. You can live your life how you see fit. But we start with our friend Matt Verderam of Fansided. You can follow him on Twitter at Matt Verderam. We talked about a whole bunch of things, from the Senior Bowl to Chiefs Bengals to the NFL's coaching carousel, which obviously now the head coaches have all been set into place. But Brian Flores' case is still very much up in the air. So we talked about a lot of things with Verderam last week, and you can hear that right here, right now on Almost Entirely Sports.
I really thought we were going to talk to you this week about the Chiefs beating the Bengals and then getting ready for a Super Bowl. I was really excited for that conversation. And then last week happened. And I'll just let you pick your favorite starting point if I give you the very vague lob question of, what the bleep happened there, Matt? What happened?
So there's a lot of ways to attack this, kind of like you're alluding to. But I think, to me, the biggest way and the most obvious way is they played with an earned arrogance in that game, and in the second half and overtime, and the last 10 seconds of the first half, they're going up to them. The Chiefs are so talented that a lot of times they don't have to do the small things well. It doesn't matter. They don't have to be great situationally. They don't have to take what their team gives them. I thought it bit them on Sunday, and look, I feel like it's easy to just always go, the coaching, because that's a lot of times the most unquantifiable thing. So it's easy to just say that, because then it's harder to be called out on it for being wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I thought in that game, I thought Andy Reid did a horrific job in the last 31 minutes of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Look, Mahomes was terrible late in the game. No one's exonerating him. Like he struggled mightily in the game. But you're facing a team that, even in real time, you're watching a game, and the Bengals are just dropping everybody on every play. They're not even hinting that they're going to try to stop you up front. You have invested multiple high-level draft picks. You've invested $80 million in your left guard. And you have this great offensive line, and you're running for 6.5 yards to carry.
Mm-hmm.
And they're dropping 8 guys on every play, and you just won't run the ball. You just will not. The play before Mahomes for the first pick which I think was the final nail in a lot of ways for them in that game. McKinnon runs for 7 yards, 2nd and 3. Just run the football. You're killing Cincinnati running football. And I feel like this is probably the hottest take I'll have about them, and maybe I've ever had about them in a lot of ways. I think there's a time where Andy Reid he just hates running the ball, and so even when they're successful at it, it's not fun for him to run the football. So they won't run the football. They don't want to run the football because it's not pleasurable. So they're going to throw it no matter what. And it doesn't. The Bengals could have dropped 11.
Right.
They just kept throwing it like that. It's just, and I think that sometimes is the difference between what could be a dynasty and what might end up being one Super Bowl win. Is like you watch those Patriots teams over the years. That team was ruthlessly efficient. If you did something like with Cincinnati on Sunday, Belichick would have ran the ball every down. Every down. They would just hand off, ran right down the field. Cincinnati basically bet that Reid was not going to run the football. It was not. If they would have lost, I mean, I think the Bengals would tell you that they knew if the Chiefs handed off there, it was ball game. But it was just there was no way to stop them otherwise. I mean, the first half was evidence of that. And again, I think it was just an arrogance. I mean, you saw it the last play of the first half, and that's on Mahomes as much as it's on Reid. Like, Patrick Mahomes has been in this league now for a while. You can't throw that football. You just can't. I don't care. Look, if there's nobody within 5 yards of Tyreek Hill, okay, fine. There's 2 guys there. Yeah. You just throw it at his feet, throw it out of bounds, throw it over his head. You cannot hit him in stride there and just hope that he can make 2 guys miss. It's the playoffs. You're not playing some throwaway game in Week 6 against the Jets. And sometimes it's exactly like every game is a throwaway game against the Jets because they're just so damn talented that it shouldn't matter.
I think you're right to say there's like an Andy Reid path and a Patrick Mahomes path. I want to follow the Andy Reid one first here at least because, look, at this point, I think I have an almost comical disdain for the running game that I don't actually have, but that's sort of the way that it's all developed around me. I grew up loving watching the Chiefs and their running backs and the running game and all of that. My gripe is always when teams run it too much in neutral situations or just for the sake of running the ball when I don't think it makes sense. If you are prepared to drop 8 dudes into coverage and I could run for 6 yards a carry, I think that's a very reasonable time to do it. I think your read on Andy Reid is right. He has always had that stick to him, even more so I think in Philadelphia than it's stuck to him here in Kansas City, of like he just does not want to run the football. And when you have Patrick Mahomes, I think that is an okay inclination to have. But I also think Andy Reid is really smart and good at coaching offensive football, and I don't understand why situationally there is not that glimmer for him there. The other part of it is, if you really want me to complain about something, they spent a first-round pick on a running back, and I know it was one they were planning on throwing the ball to more than they actually have, but they drafted a running back, and they rebuilt this offensive line, in part, of course, to protect Patrick Mahomes, but they chose some brawlers to do it, guys who could run block in more of a power scheme and not always doing, zone stuff, moving laterally and preparing for RPOs and trying to figure out if they can blast on the field or not. I don't understand. There's a disconnect somewhere in there for me, Matt, or I don't with the philosophy of how this team was built versus how they actually used him in the biggest moments.
So, look, I'll eventually find a tirade, I'm sure, about this, because the way they play, I'll never understand it. But you know what? Listen, to me, the bottom line is you do whatever the other team doesn't want you to do.
Yeah.
And analytics, and I don't hate analytics, but I do think the movement of it in a lot of ways has made everybody, or at least a lot of people, think, well, running the ball is just bad. No, running the ball is not bad. And people that think that drives me out of my mind. It's not a bad thing. I don't care if you're Patrick Mahomes. It doesn't matter. If you do whatever you have to do to win a football game. And if you're running for 6.5 yards a clip like the Chiefs were in that game, you run the ball. I don't care who your quarterback is. And by the way, second half of that game, your quarterback looked like Zach Wilson.
Right.
So maybe you ought to just hand the ball off and help the quarterback out a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, he's facing an 8-man coverage situation where they're spying him. He's not going to get rid of the ball effectively most of the time in that spot. You're running the ball at an outrageous clip, and you just won't run.
Yeah.
You just refuse to run. And to me, I don't care that your quarterback is Mahomes. I don't care that you have Kelsey and Hill. Because guess what? When Hill's doubled and Kelsey's doubled, and there's 4 other defenders still out there, and you're hoping that Byron Pringle or DeMarcus Robinson beat man coverage, you're screwed.
Yeah.
You're not going to throw the ball successfully because no one in the history of the NFL will throw the ball successfully like that. And, again, I think there is a thing with the Chiefs, and you can see it, by the way, in the first 2 playoff games, even though they won. They just believe at times that they're so much better than the other team that they just don't have to play like every other normal NFL team does. The Steelers game, now you'll look back and go, oh, that game was a blood, which it was. Kansas City killed Pittsburgh. Go back to the beginning of the game, 0-0. The Chiefs defense had given up, I think, about negative 1,000 yards to Pittsburgh before the first 4 or 5 drives of the game. Andy Reid decides that's the time to pull out a Hardman, Darrell Williams run-pass option. I guess in that play it wasn't even an RPO. It was just an option play for Hardman to either keep it or hand off. They've never run the play in the history of the franchise. Hardman fumbles the ball because, he's not a quarterback.
Right.
And the Steelers pick it up and run it in. It's the only way in the world at that point the Chiefs could have lost that game was doing something like that. Chiefs do it. Why? Because of the Chiefs. Because, again, nothing ever seems to phase them. The Bills game, which might be the greatest football game I've ever seen. You're up 23-21 with like 7 minutes left. You just got a big punt return from Hill. 3rd and 1. I believe about Buffalo's 11 or 12-yard line. You could do anything you want there. The Chiefs' answer to that is, hey, you know what would be great? Blake Bell under center running the option. I mean, this kind of stuff, I'm sorry, it's not cute, it's not innovative, it's dumb. It's dumb. It was dumb against Pittsburgh, and it was dumb against Buffalo, but they survived it because they're so talented that they made it work. Then you go into that game against Bengals, and you just play dumb. You play dumb at the end of the first half, cost you points. You play dumb all through the second half because you don't feel like running the football because it's not fun to run the football. And sometimes them look. And by the way, their defense, while I thought they actually played pretty well in the game, they're not without their own set of blame a little bit in that. Like, you're playing a Bengals team, just gave up 9 sacks to Tennessee. You can't stop anybody.
Yep.
The Chiefs have 1 sack in the game. And I'm sorry. Look, Frank Clark, you're making $28 million. You got to sack somebody. Like, I don't want to hear about, like, well, he's good against the run. Who cares? You're getting $28 million. I don't care that you're good against the run. Like, Chris Jones had, frankly, let's be real. He had a couple plays. If Chris Jones makes them, the game's different.
Yep.
It doesn't make them. I mean, and listen, Chris Jones, I thought, played well in the game, and I know he had COVID late in the year. How much does that affect the guy? I mean, some guys took a long time to recover. Maybe it had no effect. Maybe it did. I don't know. And I'm not going to speculate on the man's health. And he's a great player, but like, you got to make that play, man. You're making over $20 million a year. And at the end of, the drive where it went from 23 to 13 to 21-21, Spagnuolo's got Fenton on Chase in man coverage, just over and over and over with Sorensen to help. And then on the 2-point conversion, Sorensen in man coverage has no idea what he's doing, and just gets torched. And it's like you're playing Ben Neiman and Dan Sorensen all season long, knowing full well it's basically 11-on-9 and they're on the field. And you just keep doing it. Like, that stuff, like, it matters.
Yes.
I think sometimes the Chiefs feel like it just doesn't matter because, well, we'll just overcome it.
Yeah.
But why should you always have to overcome it? Well, and finally, you didn't overcome it, and now you're home.
Yep. Yeah, I think that I mean, we talked about that some on Monday. I think of just like the little things that we spend breathless hours talking about in the offseason, getting another pass catching option. If you are going to throw the ball, right? You mentioned you can't be relying on Byron Pringle and DeMarcus Robinson to win their one-on-one matchups as the key to keep your offense moving or not. So if you have a third option that you like better there, if it's T. Higgins or someone else, that changes things. Or if you don't take a little bit of a kind of annoying victory lap on Dan Sorensen after he picks off a batted pass and houses it, if you are just good with phasing him out and finding a way to get Armani Watts on the field, maybe your defense is better in a big moment in the playoffs. Like those little things we spend so much time on, They do come around. We haven't had to see them very often actually matter because Patrick Mahomes exists. So I want to talk about him also. Well, go ahead.
No, I was going to say really quickly. Like, look, the Sorensen thing, as much as I think it in some ways is indefensible, if you want to go free safeties, I also understand it a little bit in the sense, like, Watson's never played really any kind of meaningful football in his life. And there might be a reason for that. Like, I'm not at practice every day. You know, maybe there's just a reason. The one that, to me, though, is beyond indefensible is the knee thing.
Yeah.
You have Bowling Day, who are like these really, really, really good young linebackers.
Yeah.
And you're just yanking them off every field, every play on third down. And, you know, there's this idea, I think, like, well, you know, they're inexperienced. Who cares?
Right. They're inexperienced, shot out of a cannon.
What does it matter?
Yeah.
Like I went to fight. Now, listen, I don't want to. I'm not trying to pick on anybody or but like, tell me what one of those guys doesn't do as well as Ben Neiman. You know, I mean, look, Ben Neiman, to his credit, undrafted. The guy's a good special teams player. I think sometimes fans, and you can be a fan of you want to be. I think sometimes fans unfairly blame Neiman and Sorensen like it's their fault. They're being put in positions that they can't succeed in.
Yes.
It's not. If you ask me to build your house falls down, well, it's your fault. I'm not a carpenter.
Right.
You didn't ask me to build your house. I don't know how to build your house.
Right.
You're going, hey, Dan, what do you think? You and a receiver, one-on-one in space?
Yep.
I mean, it's not his fault. You're asking them to do something you can't do. And I just, again, it comes down to this idea with them sometimes that it doesn't matter. Because, well, they have Mahomes, they're going to go to guys, and they'll figure it out because whatever. They're so much more talented. And I think even the year they won the Super Bowl, it all worked out, and they won, and they deservedly won. Like I'm not no reason to criticize. They won, and rightfully so. They were the best team in football that year. But you know, even that year, I mean, you're running the Rose Bowl right parade and the Super Bowl, like it worked, and that's why they won because all that stuff worked. And Wasp was a miracle, and it worked. But like, it's really hard to get all that stuff to work all the time.
Yeah,
it is like. It's too much. It's too much fluff for a team that doesn't need it. Filler.
Yeah. Well, so I do want to ask about the Mahomes side of things also there, because I mean, you mentioned the times that they played dumb, and we do have times where we've seen Andy Reid miss a big moment or mismanage something or whatever. But I don't think I've ever legitimately seen Patrick Mahomes look out of sorts for 31 minutes of football, and he did in that game, and I don't know why.
You know, that one's a little harder for me because he was awful in the second half, and he was awful in overtime, and he deserves the criticism he's getting because when you're as great as he is, and when you're paid as much as he is, you have to be great all the time, and that's not fair, but it is reality. And look, I thought part of it was he just flat didn't play well. The first pick he threw was one of the worst picks I've ever seen a quarterback throw. I mean. Right now, like literally 5 different guys.
Yeah.
Like even the guy who picked it off didn't pick it off, and 3 other guys were waiting to pick it off. It was one of the worst throws. I don't know what he was doing. It was a bizarre looking play. Everything about it was weird. In overtime, like your first 2 plays were to DeMarcus Robinson.
Yep.
I mean, DeMarcus Robinson had done about as much as I had done in that game.
Yep.
Until you got to overtime, and your first 2 plays were like, hey, let's get D-Rob involved right now. It's just it makes no sense. He was bad. I think I'm not him. I'm speculating. I would say part of it, I think, was he didn't play well, just bottom line. But I also think part of it was the Bengals came in, I think, surprised them a little bit. Not too many teams only give them a 3-man rush. And the Bengals did none of that really in the first half of the game. And I give the Bengals, that's where I give Cincinnati a lot of credit. Cincinnati basically said, we're going to bet that we can cover you with 8 guys. And we're going to bet that you won't run the ball. Won the bet.
Yep.
And, you know, ultimately, look, I do think Mahomes deserves a lot of the credit when things go well because he's usually at the epicenter of it, and he deserves a lot of blame in a game like that. But, again, while I do think he does deserve blame, and I won't argue with anybody who gives him some, I really think that's a game where, like he bails them out all the time. At 13 seconds is a pretty good example of it. You've got to help your quarterback sometimes. And that's a spot where they're begging you to basically do anything to beat them other than just have Mahomes drop back and throw it for 55 times, and you just won't help them. It's like you're looking at this 8-man coverage scheme and just saying, look, Pat, I know we can run for 7 yards on any play, but instead we want you to try to fit one in there to Pringle. And it's like, what'd you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
And it happened.
Yeah. I want to take a second to ask you about Brian Flores. I want to ask about you being in Mobile for the Senior Bowl here. So my last Chiefs thing is that with that game being the lasting memory of this team, and with everything you've already laid out on Reed and Mahomes and the running game and all of that, if you're Brett Veach right now, or if you're just assessing what their offseason is going to look like, is there anything that has now risen up your rankings in terms of prioritization for this offseason that we haven't already talked about?
No, I think it's probably all the same. Even if they won the Super Bowl, I think I'd feel the same. I don't think you can allow a bad half of football, no matter how bad it was, to completely change what you want to do. Because then I think all of a sudden, you start overreacting, and one thing leads to another, and then you're all of a sudden in a bad spot. But
right.
I think they need to fix the pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be 30th in the league in sacks and be a team that has as many leads as the Chiefs do. Like you should be able
they
to sack
30th? Oh my
30th in the league.
goodness! That's a weak nation, sack nation. That is. Holy smokes!
Yeah, third world nation.
Yeah, goodness.
You need to be able to get sacked. I mean, and I get it. It's not the end all be all. You go look at pressure rate. You've got to be able to finish at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to be able to finish. I mean, Pittsburgh this year had 55 sacks. She said 30. I mean, which team was leading a lot more all year long?
Yeah.
Which team has you in a pass situation all year long? And if you're the Chiefs, what do you care if some team runs for 4.5 yards a carry? That's something I will say. I will never fault the Chiefs if they rank toward the bottom. They don't care. You care that teams can't throw the ball on you. And, I think that's one thing. Frank Clark getting named to a Pro Bowl, that's all fine. Frank Clark was not a Pro Bowler this year.
Mm-mm.
I mean, let's be honest. I would resign Melvin Ingram. I think he was terrific. Jerron Reed, it sounds like from his Twitter feed, basically has already accepted the fact he's gone. Which I think it's probably fair to say. And then, look, I think you've got to get another edge rusher. I think the linebackers are fine. I would let Hitchens go. I think it's probably time to cut him. Let Neiman go. Let Sorensen go. I think Charvarius Ward's important to bring him back. And then let's not dance around. It's a big question. And look, Orlando Brown is going to come back one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Whether they have to tag him or sign him or whatever, he's coming back. The big question is what's happening with 32 back there.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that they're going to re-sign him. I know for a fact the Chiefs genuinely do love and respect Tyrann Mathieu. And I know, and Matthew's been very open about the fact that he wants to come back. But he's going to be 30. And the Chiefs have a lot of cap considerations, and they've got other things they need to do. And look, I certainly think if they bring him back, there's a big case to be made for that. But at the same point, and I don't know if this is the case, but let's just say he says, I want 4 years and $65 million.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're the Chiefs, he's paying that. It's a fair question.
Yeah.
Because if he ages poorly, you got a big problem. I'm very interested to see how that dance goes. And then from there, but I think they're going to be active because they can create cap space. They can sign Brown, and that'll be a cheap hit the first year. They can extend Hill. They can cut Clark. They can cut Hitchens. They can do things like that. So I think they've got to improve their edge rushing and then find a third weapon, if you will, on offense to help Kelsey and Hill, so that if those guys are doubled, it's not just a complete free for all on Mahomes.
This is an impossible thing to try to. Hey, Matt, give me real quick your best 30 seconds on the Brian Flores thing. So I want to ask you to do that, but I am interested in what you have seen and heard from that all developing yesterday into tonight, and what your money would be on in terms of the impact that it could have on the NFL world.
Well, I think down here in Mobile, where the NFL basically everybody is. I think the general idea is, give Brian Flores a lot of credit. Takes a lot of guts to do what he did. I mean, he might be losing his career over this. And I don't think I've run the one person who doubts the validity of his claims.
Right.
But man, it's an awful hard thing to prove.
Yeah.
Now, it's not to say that it's not without merit. It's not to say that I don't commend him. I frankly think he's got plenty of merit. I do commend him. But it's very hard to prove intent in life.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to prove that the Giants had definitely already hired Dable before I got there, and it's because of racial reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You know, now it's hard to, the Giants can easily just say, hey, look, Belichick was overly excited and we had made that decision, but, we really were impressed with Brian Dable, who does have very good credentials. It's hard, like Stephen Ross, like that whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
The big question with that is, can you prove it?
Yeah.
Can you prove it? Was Stephen Ross dumb enough to put that in writing somewhere?
Right.
Or is that somehow on like a recording? I know it was reported by NFL Network that somebody is a witness to it. Okay, but you've got to be able to prove these things, and that's where it becomes tricky. But I think most people around the league really have a lot of respect for Flores and what he did. It's just a question of, can you make it stick? Because otherwise, it's courageous and commendable, but in the end, I don't know that it changes much because you can't prove it.
Do you think this might be a question I need to save for a law expert? Is this going to get anything out there in the discovery period? Are they going to get to a place where we might get another round of emails, or is anyone going to get deposed? Or do you have any feel on that at all?
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm bringing good old Keysor for, right?
Yeah, all right. I'll save that for not even Seth wouldn't even know that. I don't think.
It's just hard to say. I mean, it depends how the lawsuit goes.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to pretend to be anybody who's an expert in the law, but I think it's just one of these deals where, look, if Flores is going to win this lawsuit, it's probably going to be because of a combination of he's got a lot of ammunition,
mm-hmm.
and there are some smoking guns that maybe even he doesn't know about.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, Hugh Jackson came out today and was like, oh yeah, the Browns did a similar thing. Okay, Hugh, prove it.
Right.
I mean, and that's the thing. Like, it's not that I don't believe it. Look, covering the NFL, I believe a lot of things in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things. Like, if it came out that Stephen Ross was paying him to lose games, I could absolutely see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
That would be like, okay, surprising, but not like the craziest thing I've ever heard alleged about an owner in this league.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's just, again, it's just so hard to prove something like that. And when you talk about law, the burden's on you to prove it. It's not just what I may believe or somebody may believe. You've got to actually prove it.
Right. Yeah, it's easy to prove also that there is currently one black head coach in the NFL. That is a provable thing, which I think we could all look at and go, oh, yeah, that something is wrong there. But what happens from a legal point there with Flores on is going to definitely be above our heads a little bit and very difficult, but I don't know. It just could be a very interesting time, and maybe something good comes out of it. Totally off the wall here now, but you're out there for the Senior Bowl, and if people want to get your work on everything that's been happening out there at the Senior Bowl, you've written about it some already up in Fansided. I saw that you've already made your called shot on Malik Willis, which is kind of exciting. I'm sure you have eaten a truly unbelievable number of Reese's Cups. Is all of that true?
The Reese's Cups I'm still working through. I've eaten enough barbecue to last me a lifetime. In fact, it's like 10 a.m. today. It was like, what are we going to do for lunch? Well, we're going to get barbecue at 10 a.m.
Yeah, of course, you should.
Which just wrecked me. And my God, I feel like I'm like a walking bag of sodium.
I can't believe you're still awake.
You woke me up when you called me. I was shocked because I needed a nap before I went out tonight. I spent the next 4 hours at the beach, which if anyone listening to this has ever been to the beach in Mobile, they know they all just lit a candle for me. I mean, I'll tell you, I don't get COVID this week. It's never going to happen. I'll be immune for the rest of my life. But no, it's obviously you can follow me on Twitter and you can get all my work at Fansided. But it's been Malik Willis, the quarterback out of Liberty. I think everybody kind of came down here with the same idea of like, okay, we're going to see 6 quarterbacks, including Kenny Pickett of Pittsburgh and Sam Howell of North Carolina and Carson Strong of Nevada, among others. Ritter as well of Cincinnati. And you're like, okay, like, who's going to separate themselves? Because this is a year where, if you talk to a lot of people in the NFL, well, there's not really that consensus, oh, this kid's a top 5 pick at quarterback. He's the number one guy. There's a lot of like, well, maybe sort of. Malik Willis is clearly, like, beyond the shadow of a doubt, the most talented kid. Now, he's inconsistent. He's raw. His mechanics need help. His inaccuracies, I would say, show up consistently. But you watch the other 5 kids here, and nothing against them. I think they all have adequate arm talent. But Willis has just a cannon. And if you watch him throw the ball compared to anybody else here, it's almost comical how different it is. I mean, it's just the ball just flies out of his hand. Now, the problem is you also throw the ball like that when the receiver's 2 yards away from him.
Right.
So,
right.
Again, he's some coaching, but his athleticism is there. We talked to him at length this morning. Really smart, interesting kid. He talked about how he watches NFL films now of all the defenses, so he knows the kind of coverages that each defensive coordinator plays and what his tendencies are. That was a pretty fast. I don't think I've ever heard a kid at Senior Bowl say something like that. That was really interesting. And just smart. You know, there's a reporter who asked him something to the effect, and I'm sure the reporter was Steelers-based, about, you know, I saw you talking to Coach Tomlin after the practice on Tuesday. What do you know about the Steelers? You know, trying to get some information. Malik Willis said, what do you know about the Steelers? They're in Pittsburgh. And I was like, all right, I like it. Good answer.
Yeah.
So, you know, really impressive. I will tell you one guy, from a Chiefs perspective, really from an NFL perspective, but a guy who would fit with the Chiefs, I think. This kid, Perrion Winfrey, the defensive tackle at Oklahoma, that kid has been, it looks like if you took Chris Jones and just dropped him at the Senior Bowl, it's all right, Chris, have some fun for the next couple of days. That's what this kid has looked like. Like, when I watched him, the immediate comp in my mind was Chris Jones. And he's supposed to be, you know, early second round, somewhere in there. I would not be shocked if this kid tears out the combine and ends up being a late first round pick. He is an incredible athlete who has one move after the next from the D tackle spot.
That's Matt Verderam of Fansided here on Almost Entirely Sports. We caught up with him late last week, and bringing that back to you here tonight for kind of a best of AES just for this last hour. The first 2 hours, if you missed them, up wherever you get your podcasts. We talked to Seth Keysor and Jordan Foote. Those are brand spanking new for tonight's edition of AES. Jordan and I are in L.A. or on the way to L.A. or we're somewhere in Los Angeles as you hear this now, as we prepare to have Radio Row coverage live for you starting tomorrow, both on The Zone from 10 to 2 and on Almost Entirely Sports starting at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. We'll take a break, a little more best of AES whenever we come back.
As a Shane Company jewelry consultant, I get to work with couples looking for their dream engagement ring. Many feel overwhelmed. They just don't know where to start. And that's what I love about my job. I get to make this important experience fun and easy. We don't work on commission, so there's no pressure. When you visit, first, I'll want to know, what are your ideas for your dream ring? What fits your lifestyle, your personality, your budget? Then we'll go from there. We'll look at ring settings, and I'll show you options for the center stone. For example, if you choose a classic solitaire ring setting, I can show you how it'll look with different center stones, like a pear-shaped diamond or an oval pink sapphire. We have all shapes, colors, and sizes. If you're going for a big look with lots of sparkle, I can show you our halo ring settings. Or, if you want a ring that's ready to go, we can look at our perfectly preset styles. Visit your friends. We're in this together.
Now you have a friend in the jewelry business. Shane Company and ShaneCo.com.
Robert Brogdon's Olathe Buick GMC is announcing a worry-free guarantee on new Buick and GMC purchases. That's right. Buy any vehicle, and if you don't love it, they'll take it back, no matter the mileage, and refund you 100% of the purchase price. They've got the area's best selection on new models like the 2022 GMC Yukon, Sierra 1500 Limited, and Buick Encore GX. With this offer, there's never been a better time to buy. Visit robertbrogdon.com or check them out at I-35 in Santa Fe in Olathe. Customer must register vehicle. See dealer for details.
Joe's Kansas City Barbecue has made their New Year resolution, and it's to serve more barbecue. That means more competition meats by the pound during playoff football and basketball watch parties. That means more curbside pickups when you order on the Joe's Kansas City app. That means shipping more Joe's Kansas City Barbecue anywhere in the nation to your friends and family. And that means more catering meetings and events at the Joe's 180 room in Olathe. Check out all Joe's can do for you in 2022 at www.joeskc.com.
With PatriotSoftware.com, accounting and payroll, keep your time and money.
Mike Capel here, serial entrepreneur. I started my first business in the basement of a factory over 30 years ago. We had no heat and no air conditioning. Instead of customers, our office visitors were rats, birds, flies, and snakes. Our office flooded often, and we used blankets as our office walls. We were broke and needed help. That's why I created Patriot Software, to help small business owners with simple payroll for 1 to 100 employees. And if you need help, we will help you for free. Go to patriotsoftware.com. Use promo code RADIO and get 2 months of payroll processing free. That's patriotsoftware.com.
With patriotsoftware.com, accounting and payroll, keep your time and money.
Hey Chiefs fans, meet car shoppers Joe and Casey. Joe used the traditional car shopping sites. His personal info was sold to dealers and marketing companies, and now he's getting bombarded with calls and spam. Casey used OneRequest, where her personal information was not shared or sold. She found several great cars and communicated with dealers anonymously. She didn't receive phone calls and was able to stop all messages when she was done shopping. Casey for the win! Visit OneRequest.com or download the OneRequest app today.
Do you know what the top 3 New Year's resolutions are? Losing weight, quitting smoking, and paying off credit cards. A1 Mortgage can't help you lose those pounds or put out the smoke, but we can help you with a fast, easy refinance that will knock out that credit card debt. Call A1 Mortgage at 816-822-8888. That's 822-8888, or apply online at a1mortgage.com. Contact A1 Mortgage and ask about the fast, easy refinance that has no out-of-pocket closing costs, no application fee, and you can even skip 2 months of payments. So call your doctor about losing those holiday pounds and kicking the nicotine. Call A1 Mortgage about helping with those holiday bills. 816-822-8888. That's 822-8888, or apply online at a1mortgage.com.
A1 Mortgage, taking your dreams on reality is what we do.
A1 Mortgage Group, LLC, a Kansas and Missouri licensed mortgage company, NMLS 268370. Terms and conditions apply, subject to change without notice.
Hi, I'm Fred Ramsey. And I'm Mark Tobin. Hey, folks, if you're not busy Saturday mornings from 6 to 7 a.m., well, I hope you'll join us for the Midwest Outdoors, brought to you by Reed Chevrolet, St. Joe.
Join us and our expert guests, and we'll be talking about hunting and fishing, dog training. We'll give you tips, pass along stories, and most important, share some laughs along the way.
That's right. We cover it all, from crappie to waterfowl, and we'll tell you how to cook it, too.
The Midwest Outdoors, brought to you by Reed Chevrolet, Saturday morning, 6 a.m. to 7 a.m., right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Sports Radio 810 WHB is headed to Radio Row for Super Bowl 56. Tune in all week long as The Zone and Almost Entirely Sports broadcast live from the Los Angeles Convention Center with a star-studded lineup of celebrities, analysts, and current and former NFL players. We'll bring you all the sights and sounds from Westwood One's Radio Row leading up to Super Bowl 56 at SoFi Stadium. And don't forget, your exclusive home for the live broadcast of Super Bowl 56 is right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
You're listening to Almost Entirely Sports.
Well, Sterling Holmes has made it into the front seat of this segment. That doesn't mean anything. You can follow him on Twitter at HomestretchKC. You can hear him over on ESPN Kansas City, 1510 AM, 94.5 FM, arrowheadaddict.com. I think that's all the things that you do, Sterling, other than just, again, following you on Twitter. Is there anything else you would like to tell people to find you through?
With Joshua Brisco.
I also sell real estate, so you can find me on betterhomesandgardens.com.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Rounding out the evening of tonight's Almost Entirely Sports, I'm Joshua Brisco, Rudy Salazar on the other side of the glass, and we're dipping our toe in a little best of some of the things you may have missed from late last week. Sterling Holmes, our friend from ESPN Kansas City, you can hear him on the home stretch, back from 3 to 4 every weekday over there. He does a great job, don't tell him I said that. But we had plenty of things to talk about, both silly and fun, both sports and sad. We were able to cover a good number of topics with Sterling last week. If you want our full conversation, you can go hear it wherever you get your podcasts. Just search for Almost Entirely Sports. But here's what you may want to hear right now, as Sterling and Rudy and I all chatted about the ways of the world on Friday. As we'll all be fresh and brand new content for you. Of course, we had the first 2 hours, Seth and Jordan Foote. You can hear both of those in your podcast feeds. But also back live from Los Angeles, from Radio Row. That's starting tomorrow. Here's our conversation with Sterling Holmes from late last week.
Here's a question I was going to ask you a second ago, whenever you said gooey. Are you a Wordle boy?
I just now did it. I hate when people post it on Twitter because, to be honest with you guys, I don't care.
Yeah, it's fine. You can scroll past it.
Who cares?
No one really, but it makes you feel good.
Past it, yeah.
Just scroll past it.
If it makes you happy, do it. But
see, that's the thing.
I think it's weird. I think it's
I don't tweet mine.
Just scroll past it.
I don't tweet mine.
But yes, I do Wordle.
But okay, I feel like it's something that you would like. It's a little brain teaser to start your day.
Yeah.
It's not a whole crossword. You don't need 45 minutes. Although one day I did. You don't need 45 minutes and a pencil.
You do.
Sometimes you might, but you don't. Your whole day doesn't have to be about your Wordle. You can just have your coffee, and I imagine you drinking coffee out of a plain beige mug like you would get at a diner.
No, I have a lot of fun. I actually have a lot of fun mugs.
That's good.
A lot of good ones.
That would be my second guess, actually, that you would say the phrase, I have a lot of fun mugs. I also, just to be clear, have a lot of fun mugs. What are your three... Hold on. Do we have any sounds that we could play at all that would indicate the punctuation of Sterling's top 5 favorite mugs? Start thinking, Sterling. I'm going to go 5 to 1.
Top 5.
5 to 1. I want to get your 5 favorite mugs.
Like, what do you mean, like...
He says, he just...
Like a big voice that goes 5, 4, 5.
No,
4.
just like a party horn. It can be the breaking news little sweeper. That little thing is fine. If we have the physical capability of playing
that. If you have any Hanson.
If you have any Hanson, that would be great. Oh, how long has this segment been going on? Oh, longer than I thought. By a lot. A lot longer than I thought.
We probably got to hurry.
I wanted to ask you.
Okay, I'll take it.
You know what?
I'll throw it to you right now.
No, hold on.
I'll give you top 3. I'll be quick.
Hold on.
Okay.
I want to know how you felt about Chiefs Bengals. I do want to know what your actual theory on that was. We almost got there earlier than we got distracted. Almost entirely sports. Welcome to the offseason, everybody. I also don't know how much time Rudy needs to sift through the system to try to find an appropriate sounder. He just shrugged, which makes me think that this is... I should just do it a cappella.
Somehow I found a bunch of breaking news ones, and none of them work, apparently.
Good. No, none of them just play out of the system because they haven't been played since 1997. That makes sense. Don't worry, I've got the audio. I'm going to do it. Do you have your top 5 or your top 3?
Number 5.
Top 3. Okay. Sterling Holmes, number 3 favorite fun mug.
It's Rush Permanent Waves. So it's the Permanent Waves album, but Rush.
Ka-chow!
My second favorite boy band.
Sterling, what's your number 2? Hey, Sterling, if you just back off.
Sorry.
Number 2.
It's going to be my Doc Ford's mug from Sanibel Island, Florida. Doc Ford's. It's a restaurant down there. Perfect size, fits in your hand.
Bazinga. What makes a perfect mug size for you?
It's got to at least hold 12 ounces, but it can't be too big to be used also as a soup bowl. That's too big. Yeah. I ain't trying to walk around being the guy who, it was the murder with a mug in the library. It's too big.
Yeah. You want to be able to fit all 4 of your fingers in the mug handle.
Doesn't have to be necessarily.
That's my
but also
preferred.
I don't want it too big that I can be framed for murder.
Right. So that makes sense.
Number 1.
Number one.
Got it this Christmas from my mom. It says, "Dear Naps, I'm sorry I was a jerk to you as a kid." It's kind of fun.
It's kind of fun.
It fits.
Ka-chinga!
I hated naps as a kid. And
Bada-bing!
Now I can't nap. But
I actually have a lot of favorite mugs. I'll just send you a picture of mine.
I want to.
No, Sterling.
I want to have a good relationship with naps, but I can't. Just can't.
You just hurt each other. Don't text me a picture of these. Tweet out a picture of them later, because here's the thing. Send them after the show tonight. It's tomorrow morning even. Let's make people wait for it, because here's the thing. Ready, Stu?
I don't think anyone cares.
No.
Almost entirely sports listeners are different. We're built different around here.
Yes, every morning.
Yes.
So you're not tweeting out all of them at once.
Yes.
It's one at a time.
Yes.
Every time you pull a new one out, it's like, hey, mug number 1, mug number 2,
If anyone
whatever.
tweets at me and it says, "At Homestretch KC, I want to see your mug collection," then I will do this. I will send 1 mug a day.
I'll tweet it right now.
I was also thinking I would do it right now.
Not you guys. I can't count. Got to be
Someone has to tweet you at Homestretch KC and say, "I want to see your mug collection."
I got my burner account.
And then every day, what you just do, you make a cup of coffee. Before you drink it, you just hold it out in front of you. You take a picture and you tweet it out. Here's my social media advice: put it in a thread where you're replying to the previous day's photo.
Yep, that way people can, if they miss the first 4 days.
You think I actually know how that works?
They can
I will
backtrack.
teach you in the break. It's not that difficult. We can make this work. I love this bit. I think it's going to be a great recurring bit for you. I need you to take advantage of it.
Okay.
When you're famous, Sterling, just know we do demand 10%.
Yeah, for sure. If Sterling's mug is incorporated, and also every piece of your future earnings.
10% of every signing bonus is ours,
including all of the realtor stuff.
Yeah,
emotional support. It's like tithing, like you would do at church. 10%.
Time you sign a piece of paper and you get money. 10% of that's ours.
What about when I lose?
And really quick, just to make sure, just so we're on the same page,
10%
Rudy,
of like -10 is 0, so we're good.
10% is ours, but 90% of that is mine. You get 10% of the 10%.
75-25.
Deal. For me, I'm 75.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, great.
I know my place.
I'm more supportive of Sterling than you are. I'm excited for this bit. You drink coffee every day? You would every day?
Couple a day.
Okay. Yeah, but you would...
Dude, you saw me walk in with a QT.
Yeah, but that's... is it an at-home coffee mug every day, usually?
Pretty much one a day.
Here's a question.
Unless I'm on the go.
For the coffee drinkers in the audience. Whenever you use a coffee mug once, that first time, where does the mug go? What do you do? How often does it go straight into the dishwasher, straight into the sink? Will you hold it around in case you want a second cup that day? I'll tell you my strategy, since you asked, is that I'll make a cup of
Josh,
coffee.
what's your strategy?
Thank you, Rudy. You know what? You get 70%. Or you get, 30%. I get 70-30 now. You got 5 more percent of Sterling's future earnings. Make a cup of coffee. I will drink that cup of coffee, and I'll go and I'll rinse it out. I'm usually just a black coffee drinker.
Yeah, I'm black too.
Well, no, not... Yeah. That was a sentence that I wish you would have framed
I
differently.
Only drink black coffee.
Right. As well.
Yeah. Too.
Yeah. You drink black coffee exclusively. You are a person who drinks black coffee.
Correct. I feel like I'm failing a test right now. You know when you get a test and it's like explain your answer and you're not doing a very good job, but you're just like, let me see if I can somehow find my way out of this.
I gotta get a paragraph written down.
and then you realize you wrote the whole thing down and you go, man, this is wrong, but I gotta turn something in. That's his whole segment.
There were 100 ways you could have said, I don't have creamer in my coffee. And the way
Nor sugar.
Yeah, sure. And the way that you said it was...
And with the confidence, frankly.
Yeah.
The gall, someone said.
The stones.
Oh my goodness!
So we're gonna talk that whole sports thing.
I wanted to ask you I want to ask you for Chiefs Bengals. I want to ask you Chiefs Bengals. My question is simple. It is, what happened?
So I think I can talk about it now that I've had my 5 beers. It's like the 5 steps of grief.
All just during this segment.
Beers.
I wish I had
it was the happy beer.
Yeah.
The I'm getting nervous beer.
Yeah.
The sad beer. The hopeful beer, because overtime I thought they had a chance.
Yeah.
And then it was the morning beer, not with the U, but the next morning I broke up and had my beer.
It was both. It can spell it either way. Yeah.
This is on Mahomes, and that's pretty much it. And for me, it's easier to swallow when it's on your best player. It wasn't Dan Sorensen getting torched, right? That'd be hard to handle. It wasn't on the refs giving the Bengals 6 opportunities from the 1-yard line. Mm-hmm. It wasn't on the offensive line collapsing. It wasn't on injuries. The biggest culprit was Mahomes. You could say Chris Jones missed 2 sacks that were pretty big plays.
Sure,
you can say Andy Reid and the offense as a whole got away from the run. But to me, it was the last play of the first half when Mahomes begged, sounds like, for that play, one more opportunity. Mm-hmm. Went against what Andy Reid said. Maybe didn't realize that there was already a timeout burnt from a poor decision earlier on in that half. Mm-hmm. And then it seemed like he got the Chuck Knobloch, the John Lester, he got the yips.
Yeah.
Mahomes got in his head. And that was the game. And I can live with that more so than I can a lot of different other scenarios.
I agree with pretty much all of that. The part, though, that I hadn't heard from anybody else yet this week is that fact makes it easier to deal with. I totally understand where you're coming from on it. I think the conventional wisdom is that makes it worse because it wasn't supposed to happen. Like that, the conversation, where does this loss fit in Chiefs history in terms of grand disappointments. They were in the AFC Championship game. That's pretty good. But I think this loss is a miserable one in the grand history of the Chiefs because they had expectations. They were 7-point favorites and would have been favored against the Rams in the Super Bowl. That was right there for the taking. The losses to the Titans and Steelers of years past, I remember that touchdownless Steelers victory like it was yesterday.
6 field goals.
Brutal game.
And I remember it vividly, but I don't think it is as brutal a game in the grand scheme of things, because if the Chiefs didn't lose then, they were going to lose next week, you know? In this case, they should be in the Super Bowl. We should be doing 2 weeks of Chiefs-Rams previewing.
I agree.
Should be the second time the Chiefs have played the Rams in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, true.
The first time, T. Ford was offsides.
Yeah.
But I would also say, at least for me, it shows that no one's perfect. This was the easiest stretch, and for me, no one's more upset than Mahomes, right? We're all pissed off talking about it. All fans are upset because this seems like the perfect opportunity to cement your legacy, get your second Super Bowl, which is, I think, the big separator between 1 and 2 is massive, unless you're Eli Manning. But he's done it so many times. 9 times out of 10, he gets it done. There's going to be a time where he collapses and doesn't get it done. You ride with it. You got to understand it. He's human. I know people like to say he's God in cleats or he's this, that, and the other. He puts his pants on. I get their expensive-ass pants, but they're pants like everyone else.
I don't actually know if he does put the pants on the same way.
And so
I put them on in a weird way.
Yeah, personally, I will jump rope with my own pants and then try to jump into them both legs at a time.
But you're still putting them on.
But I am putting them on.
You're still putting them on.
We do both bleed red blood.
The worst part for me was the relative health of Kansas City. That's what probably makes it the hardest to swallow is they were so healthy. They didn't have a major injury. Your main core is here. Not saying they won't potentially be back next year, but the offensive line, no longer an excuse. You didn't have Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. Mahomes was banged up most of the year.
Yeah.
They won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
It just seemed like an easy route, but we all know any given Sunday, nothing's easy in the NFL. But again, it's easier for me when it's not Sorensen, the refs, the defense, penalties, when it's the guy you have $500 million in. I trust him the next 9 times probably to get it done in this situation.
I do think there is something to, like, this is the first time we've seen Mahomes lose in the playoffs with a team that was healthy.
It's the first time we've seen him bleed that red
blood. Right? Like, obviously they lost in the Super Bowl, but, like, the offensive line was just so broken that, like, you know what I mean? Like, Mahomes couldn't do anything.
Receivers dropping passes off their face.
I don't remember the exact state of the roster back in 2018, but I don't remember everybody, or really anybody in that game being, like, the Chiefs having a massive injury issue. So you're talking about the first time they've lost a playoff game in, like, 4 years where injuries weren't the factor, right? Or, like, there wasn't really an outside source. It was just, hey, you just didn't play well.
Yeah.
And even that first one, I guess, right? Like, you can sum it up to the Chiefs played well. They just went up against Tom Brady. Oh, well, the defense didn't play well. The offense played well. Tom Brady was just Tom Brady.
I think I know where you're going on this already, Sterling, because of how you just laid it out, but it'll kind of get you out of here on this. Does anything change for you for the 2022 and beyond Chiefs from anything that you saw? Not necessarily Mahomes' category, but from the lessons learned from that game. Is there anything that is going to change for this team in your mind?
I would say run the football more, which is absolutely hilarious coming from me.
Right.
But in certain situations, I'm not team running game doesn't matter. For the most part, I'm team running back doesn't matter. When you have an offensive line and you're ripping off 6+ yards a carry, and they're dropping,
and your quarterback is struggling,
and they're dropping 8 dudes into coverage.
Yes.
To me, that was the main factor. Will Andy Reid ever do that? At some point, you have to say, what's it? A leopard doesn't change its spots, or is that...
A tiger doesn't change its stripes, which is even crueler because they just lost to the Bengals.
Yeah.
A team with literal stripes in their helmet and pants.
But maybe more pass rush, maybe another wide receiver. I like the emergence of Mecole Hardman in his role.
Yep.
He might not be traditional wide receiver 2, but in his role, he was fantastic. DK Metcalf wasn't doing that. Terry Sarah McLaughlin wasn't doing that.
That's Sterling Holmes of ESPN Kansas City. You can hear him on the home stretch, 3 to 4, every weekday over there on ESPN Kansas City. That was our chat from late last week. The reason that we're doing that at all right now is because the one and only Jordan Foote and I are in L.A. right now. It's the magic of radio. Sometimes we have to record things. It's like a podcast that you play live. But that was the case here tonight. If you missed any of tonight's show, though, this was not all best of. Just this last hour, helping us get things moving as we get to L.A. to prepare for Radio Row. Coverage will be getting bright and early tomorrow, 10 o'clock on The Zone. Jason Anderson will be live out there with us. He'll be live first. We'll be live, ready to go for AAS tomorrow night. But if you want to hear what you missed tonight, go check out the podcast feed. We talked to Seth Keysor and Jordan Foote about all sorts of things. Seth, mostly Chiefs, obviously. Jordan and Rudy and I, we went all over the place. But no matter what it was that you maybe enjoyed the most this evening on Almost Entirely Sports, appreciate you being here for it. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 o'clock from Los Angeles. Radio Row always brings a good time. This year sure to be no different. Looking forward to the experience at Radio Row. I will talk to you tomorrow from Los Angeles. Until then, bye, Mom.
If you need a prepared dinner for that special person, Hen House's Delicatessen offers the Valentine's Day dinner for two. Free entree selections, boneless prime rib, turkey breast, or salmon, including an appetizer and fresh salad to share with your sweetie, plus side dishes and desserts, only $49.99. Avoid the restaurant crowds and enjoy this dinner for two at home with your special person. These dinners are fully cooked for your convenience. Just reheat. Everything you need to make this Valentine's special can be found at your local Hen House Market.
This is Chad with 810. Losing weight sucks. At least it did before I got help from Shaman's Leewood Total Wellness. I met with Dr. Kapoor, and he's got me on a program that's finally working. I'm not hungry, I'm not cranky, and I've lost over 20 pounds in just 6 weeks. Their team is easy to work with, and it's not just a pill, it's weight loss coaching, and it works. Check them out at shamantotalwellness.com or call 913-227-9150. Remember, life is better with the feather.
Hey guys, are you still looking for a great Valentine gift for your special someone? Then give her the next best thing to wearing nothing at all with soft, silky, naturally nude pajamas available exclusively from pajamagram.com. So sensuous and smooth, naturally nude pajamas feel just like her own soft skin. She'll love slipping these on every night. They are so soft and luxurious, they'll melt away her stress. She'll love the feeling of wearing next to nothing at all, and you'll love the way they look. Check them out at pajamagram.com. Best of all, every Pajamagram includes free gift packaging, which means you don't have to wrap a thing. So get her naturally nude pajamas. Just go to pajamagram.com or text the word GIFT to 41234. Again, text the word GIFT to the number 41234 to order naturally nude pajamas. It's fast, it's easy, and delivery by Valentine's Day is guaranteed. And be sure to tell them Stephen St. John sent you. Now's the time to establish and or maintain a barrier around your home with Augustine Exterminators. Don't let it break down. At Augustine Exterminators, they have you covered. Augustine Exterminators is a family-owned local business since 1966. All of their techs are certified in both Missouri and Kansas. They are a Quality Pro and Green Pro company. Augustine Exterminators also does carpet, rug,